Okay, I think we'll start now. Can everybody hear me in the call? If you can hear me clearly, can you just at least type yes in the chat box? Very well. A very good afternoon and Selamat Hari Raya Aidilfitri to those of you who are celebrating this meaningful festival. My name is Joanne, the Manager Learning Support for ACCA Malaysia. Thank you for taking the time for this SBL enrichment session today. I know Sean Purcell is not an unfamiliar face to many of you. Well, I will leave that for Sean to tell you more about him later, as well as the agenda of the session today. Yeah. Now, before I hand over to Sean, I'd just like to give a quick cover on the housekeeping item. Yeah. If you have any questions during the session, please use the Zoom control panel chat box just at the bottom of the screen. And then you select to send to all panelists and attendees so that others can see your comments as well. Now, we will have a lot to cover today, so without further ado, I will now pass the session to you, Sean. Thank you and enjoy the session, everyone. Sean, you need to unmute yourself, though.
Yeah, I don't know why it was muted.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're well. Well done for taking the time. I know it's a kind of a special weekend for you all, and you're probably celebrating and don't want to really be listening to me talk about ACCA to you. But, you know, thank you to the ACCA for putting this on to help you understand more. We've got a session today where we're going to talk about SBL, and I hope it can be of some use to you. So I just want to share my screen with you. 1 second. I want to share this one here. So you can see I'm thinking that the people we have in the audience today are people who are doing the June exam, but I know some of us might not be doing the June exam. And just so I understand my audience to whom I'm talking, I'm going to just put a quick poll on the screen to see when are you doing the exam. So if I can just launch this poll, if you can just let me know. Fantastic, thank you very much. Okay, fantastic. I've got over 95% of you voting. Some people might be having a little nap, but 95% will do for me. I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results. I can share the results with you, but basically 100% of you are doing the exam in June, which is great. That's what I assumed, but never assume anything. I thought I'd better just check. Just stop sharing that poll. Lose the poll. Okay, so my target audience is correct. You've confirmed that, so thank you very much. I want to provide some insights in how you're going to be successful in your June exam. Some of you might be taking a CBE exam for the first time. I want to talk a little bit about that to give you some guidance. In terms of my background, I'll tell you a little bit about it, but also I'm quite familiar with your lovely country.
Hi, Sean. I'm so sorry to interrupt because I don't think you are sharing your slides at the moment.
Let me have a look.
Yep, sure.
I am not. I haven't pressed share again. I do apologize. I just want to stop sharing. I'm sharing the wrong one. Thank you for butting in there. Let me just share this correctly.
Okay.
So you did see the poll, didn't you?
Yep, the poll is fine.
The poll came up. The poll came up. I'll just pop back to here. Seeing everything okay?
Yep, everything's all right.
Fantastic. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I'm targeting the correct audience because from the poll, 100% of you are doing the exam in June. What is my aim? Well, my aim is to provide a few insights to help you be successful in your SBL exam coming up in a few weeks' time. In terms, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, but the first thing I will say is that's me in Malaysia, or that's a picture of me in Malaysia. Oh, over 20 years ago, I would say. I don't know whether some of you would have been born when the Bass Mini existed. I remember going to KL when the only shopping centre, in addition to Bukit Bintang, was Lot 10, and people used to go on special trips to go around Lot 10 because it was so amazing. There was no rain covers on Jalan Petaling. There was kind of open drains in a lot of the back streets. You had to be careful. And, you know, I've loved going to Malaysia for the last 20 plus years. I've traveled all around it as well when I've not been working. So please ask me any questions which you like. Yep, any questions which you like. Yep, yeah, uses. I've been all. I went all around it on a local bus actually, all around the East Coast, the West Coast, the Central area. So yeah, great country. I love it, and I love eating food on the street. Yeah, so I'm very familiar with it, and I actually set one of the first accountancy colleges up on what was it, Jalan? It was opposite the Swiss Garden Hotel, Jalan Pudu. I think it was Jalan Pudu. So long time ago, but all good fun. So that's my kind of connection with Malaysia and why I love talking to people from Malaysia. I just want to take something off the screen here. Just you're not seeing a I'm sharing a screen where a calendar thing has come up. Are you just seeing a picture of a Bass Mini, or are you seeing something on top as well? Just a Bass Mini? If you just put something in the chat panel, that would be great. Just see that. Great. Okay, perfect. There's just something on the screen, maybe just for me. Perfect. All right. So if you've never heard of me and you don't know who I am, well, I've been teaching students for over 25 years, and basically started my career with a company called Emil Wolf, and kind of just stumbled across it. And basically, if you follow what I say today, you're definitely going to have a much greater chance of passing the SBL exam. And you could say, well, anyone can say that. Okay, well, fair enough. Anyone probably can say that. But let me tell you a little bit more about myself. In the UK, we have an award where there is as a prestigious magazine where they award someone the Lecturer of the Year. I was awarded this award as the 2020 Lecturer of the Year. So I'm the PQ Lecturer of the Year, which is voted by thousands of accountancy students in the UK. I've also been runner-up for that award on a couple of occasions, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of confidence that I'm not just saying I'm great. They're independent kind of awards. What else can I tell you about myself? I work with the ACCA as their tutor guru, so that involves me dealing with countries where sometimes there's a poor pass rate on SBL, and I design programs to help students improve. Also, I do this for tutors of ACCA SBL around the world as well. And I was actually involved with SBL probably 2 years before the exam was even launched. So the exam was launched in September 2018. I'd been working with the ACCA on developing a course to teach tutors to teach SBL for more than 2 years prior to that. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some confidence, and please ask me any questions you like. ACCA have asked me to talk to you today. If you go onto the ACCA YouTube channel, and I know there's a lot of rubbish on YouTube, but on the ACCA official YouTube and look at SBL, you'll see that a lot of it is me. If you look at the articles on Student Accountant, you'll see a lot of them are written by me. If you go on the website and look at technical articles, again, they're written by me. So hopefully, you have got my trust. I just kind of, when I work for the ACCA and going around, a lot of people with their referencing say, oh, I follow this person, and I'm not sure who that is. Yep. There's a lot of experts online these days, particularly in lockdown. Yep. So very nice that they want to sell advertising around some, okay accounting course, but is it only their website which is credible? I think of fake news. Just because someone broadcasts it, it doesn't mean it's true. So just be very careful of the experts online. If you want to contact me or read more about me, there's a website, there's an email, and you can also get hold of me on LinkedIn. So I do post quite a lot about SBL and ACCA in general. Quite a lot of people follow me on LinkedIn. I don't know whether you use LinkedIn, but LinkedIn, it's a funny thing, LinkedIn, the algorithm, not everyone always sees it. But yeah, that's where you might find out more after today if you wish. So what I want to begin with, and I'm going to come back to this later, is if you're going to be successful in any ACCA exam, that success needs to be based on firm foundation stones. Okay, so there needs to be firm foundation stones, and those foundation stones for me are firstly in your brain. Yep. So I'm going to talk about this later, but you really need to connect with why you want to pass this exam. Because if you make that connection, well, what that's going to do, it's going to ensure that you put in the extra effort. Yep. And I think that's really, really important that you're personally motivated. I'll talk more later. I think you also need to be personally organized. And get yourself in proper shape so that you can maximize your chance for this exam. And obviously, I'm a big fan of everything the ACCA puts out and everything the ACCA approves. So make sure that you're not using, I don't know, some notes from somewhere which are not approved by the ACCA. Use ACCA stuff. Yeah, you should be practicing on the ACCA CBE platform as you've got an ACCA CBE exam. Okay. Right. I'm just going to, you've heard me talk for a little while now. I'm just going to I've got a question here. I seated for the SBL paper in December 20. Unfortunately, the question and answer scheme paper-based does not upload into the ACCA's website. ACCA's plan to upload the real exam question after for how many months actually? You can't upload it onto the ACCA. I think what you mean is, are you talking about uploading it onto the ACCA CBE platform? Is that what you're saying? Muthura Osmar? No. Okay, I don't understand what you're saying then, Muthura, because I can get December 20 on the ACCA website straight away. Yep. As I can get the December 20 examiner's report. I'm not going to take all this stuff off the screen, but it's there. I'm sure other people can confirm, but maybe that's not your question. I'm still not quite clear. Are you saying that the exam which you sat was not the same exam which is uploaded? Is that what you're saying? Okay. Well, the fact is that I think the ACCA now will have some variants of exams because the exams are taking place on the CBE platform. They're taking place all around the world. And I think it would probably be unreasonable to expect someone to take an exam at 3 in the morning. So you will find that there will be slight variance in those exams. That's fine. But just because you can't see the exam you sat, I'm not sure why you want to see the exam you sat. you know, the ACCA don't return your answers to you. So I'm not quite sure. Well, okay, you do need to repeat, I agree. But there are lots of other resources which you can look at. And, you know, exams tend to rinse, repeat. I mean, there's a huge exam library which you can look at. There's also lots of examiner reports out there which you can also read and look at. So that would be my advice to you, Muthara Osmar. Hopefully that's okay. Okay, yeah. So you get on the ACCA website, use those resources. Alrighty, what else do I want to say to you? Well, so we're talking about foundation stones of success. Just to remind you, if you're taking the exam for the first time, most exams which you will have taken so far, certainly at the applied skills levels, would require you to acquire knowledge and learn things, and then, you know, demonstrate your knowledge in the exam. SBL as an exam is different because it's not a technical exam. It's not an exam you're able to learn. By all means, look at certain theories, but you're not going to be asked about the theory. We use the theory as a catalyst to help us structure an argument. Yep. And the key thing we really need to be able to do is we need to be able to understand what's going on. That's absolutely key. Yep. So trust me on that, and have some confidence to express an opinion. Yep. If I was to just briefly summarize what we need to look at in terms of the examining team and what they say about SBL, they see it as a substantially integrated exam. Yeah, and that means rather than simply demonstrate knowledge of an area, SBL will require that knowledge to be blended with commercial focus, practical focus in the context of the scenario. Yep, and you're going to be asked to address things in the context of strategic leadership, you know, and you're going to have to do this in a kind of workplace related way. Yep. So for an example, you might have really excellent knowledge about Pestel, but in this exam, you wouldn't be expected to list out all of the components of Pestel. Yep. And if you just listed them out, you wouldn't score very well. Yep. If a candidate talked about the most pertinent features of an organization's environment being inspired by Pestel, that would score much more highly. So you might have only talked about social and political factors, but really explained them well. That's how you're going to score better. Okay, so you are allowed to use your common sense, your business acumen, and you are going to be assisted by tools and models which will act as catalysts to organize your brain, but you're not expected to regurgitate those models. Yep, that's important. Yep, so that's really what I want to say. It's a practical exam. It involves role play, and it's really your opportunity to demonstrate how you would behave in the workplace. Yeah, so it's a great exam actually. And really, I'd also, with another hat on, I do work with finance teams, qualified finance teams, and in those businesses, they're trying to prepare for the future and they're trying to make themselves future ready. And an example of helping them make themselves future ready is to embrace many of the things that strategic business leader talks about. So the kind of need to give people the ability to do management accounting calculations and tax calculations is probably less relevant in the workplace because a machine will do that for you. Computers will do that for you. But what computers can't do is they can't interpret lots of information and draw opinions from it. computers can add 1 and 1 to 2 or much more complicated sums, but they can't kind of analyze and synthesize information. And that's why SBL has been introduced to help you become a more future relevant accountant, because they are the skills that you're going to need as an accountant going forward. Okay. I've got a question from Aaron. How will the CBE format differ from the paper-based in terms of reading the exhibits? It will be much harder. No, as you are not able to flip through pages simultaneously. You are, and really, Aaron, at this stage in the game, if you have not been onto all the excellent resources the ACCA have put on for you and all the excellent tutorials of how to navigate the CBE platform, my goodness, you've got to get on there, my friend. You've got to get on there as soon as this webinar is over. It's a little bit like taking your driving test and waiting to get in the car for the day of the driving test. Tips for the first time at CBE. Well, it actually makes your life easier, I believe. Yep. So obviously it's a change and people might be worried about it. I would try, my tip would be to try to do an exam 2 times on the CBE platform and get it marked. It's a bit like, you know, would you learn to swim by reading a book? So let me have a look at this book then. Okay, so what I do, I kick my legs, I move my arms. There's no way you're going to learn to swim by reading a book. Just like there's no way you're going to learn to drive by reading a book. Yeah, what you need to do, you need to get in there, you need to swallow a bit of water, and you need to realize this works better than that. But the only way you're going to do that is by doing some practice. So that's my tips for CBE, and I'll take you through some CBE answers just to show you how it all works. Okay, so thank you, Aaron and Akmal, for your questions. That's great. Keep them flying in. Okay, let me just very briefly remind you about what's going to come on the SBL syllabus. So we've talked about the rationale. You understand the technical content, but what are we supposed to understand? Well, we look at the things from the perspective of leadership. We look at, or we should understand about governance. So when we're thinking about governance, you know, governance is important. There's an agency conflict, isn't there, where you have shareholders own the company and managers running the company, and so the shareholders would be the principals, the board would be the agents, and they need to be acting in the work of the board need to act in the interest of the shareholders and not themselves. So that's what governance is set up to do, to protect the shareholders. We have NEDs, we have a balanced board, we have committees. So just appreciate all of those aspects. That's important. We then need to look at strategy. There's a couple of articles I've written on the ACCA website you should have a look at on the strategic planning process, and they just show how really strategy, we can break it down into nice sequential steps. You should appreciate the concept of risk, and you know, if we're going in business, we're going to have risk. If there's no risk, it's unlikely to make money. But we need to look at the likelihood of risk and the impact of risk, and we appreciate a little bit about risk maps. So that's important. You should have awareness, not just of what's in a book, but what's happening in terms of technology. So, you know, the fact that we're talking online on a Zoom call here, and I'm talking from London to you in Malaysia, fantastic. Do we need to go back into the office? Can we use robots to do accounts? Data analytics can be, because of the expansion in RAM, their processing power is much, much higher. You know, we couldn't do video calling on a phone. Now we can do quite extensive, complicated data analytics on our phone. I think our phone is so many times more powerful than the first computers were. So all of that has led to great opportunities. So, you know, I wouldn't just be looking at that in a book. I'd be reading some of the ACCA Insights articles on things like blockchain and that kind of stuff. We should also appreciate principles of control. And how we kind of control a business in an appropriate way. In terms of finance, well, you've proven that you can do a P&L and stuff like that, but you need to be able to, you know, add value to numbers and realize and be kind of skeptical about them, I suppose, and realize that, yeah, some of those figures are somewhat guesstimates and we don't take them as face value. And then we should also appreciate, just general things about what's changing. So you definitely need to know about change management. In terms of performance excellence, everyone says, oh, learn the Baldrige model. Well, okay, I have an awareness of it. There has been an exam question, but you could have passed that question really well without having any knowledge of the Baldrige model because it was all very similarly listed in one of the exhibits. So I find people spend too much time looking at the Baldrige. I mean, okay, it's just one person's idea of what constitutes performance excellence. Yep. And then the other thing that's really important on SBL that you must do is when looking at a task is you must look at that task through the lens of each of these, through each of these in red, which are called professional skills. And I'm going to spend a little time talking about those and explaining that to you. Yep. So that's what we have. So let me have a look. Amar has said, during the exam, can we get a physical paper to scribble while reading the exhibits on the screen? Absolutely not. No. You're not allowed any scrap paper in the exam. And again, please familiarize yourself with all the great resource on CBE exams. You will not get a piece of paper. It will not be allowed. There is something called a scratch pad on the CBE platform, but my advice would be do not use the scratch pad. Okay, and why? Because the scratch pad does not get handed in. So I'm going to do all my planning in the word processing area of the CBE, and I'm going to say plan. Yep, because that does get handed in. And say you were a borderline candidate, if you've done your planning and analysis on the word processing area, the examining team can have a look to see whether your logic is correct. But if you did it on scratch pad, I'm getting confused with scrap paper. If you did it on the scratch pad, that doesn't get handed in. For reasons of security and exam proctoring, you're not allowed any scrap paper. Yep. Wei said, could explain a bit more for blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, since recently often come out with an indicator. Of course. Can I explain? Wait, there's articles all over the ACCA website on that. So blockchain is this isn't a lecture about blockchain. There's tons of information you can access yourself. The point I would suggest is have an awareness of what blockchain can do. Blockchain is a distributed ledger technology which allows you to it basically allows you to have a universal point of truth. That's what it is. Yep. Make sense? Okay. All right. Yes, you've got to read about that. Kindly set your chat option to be sent. Yeah, send it to all panelists and attendees. Yeah, exactly. So the students. Just do that, please. Just a bit of housekeeping. Okay, so we all right with that? Yep. Okay. Moving on. It's not a technical exam. Okay, you should really familiarize yourself with past papers through the exam back catalogue. To remind you of the format and the length and everything else, let me talk about it. It's 4 hours, but actually think of it as a 3-hour exam, which you've got 4 hours to do. Okay, but it does require concentration and discipline to do an exam for 4 hours. There is 100 marks, but 20 of those marks are for professional skills marks, and they take no time to acquire. Okay. The other 80 are technical marks, so that's it's only really 80 marks in the exam. You've got 4 hours to get 80 marks. You need 50 to pass. There's over 12 pages of information, so you need to become accomplished at reading and digesting a lot of information quite quickly. The questions are all based on the same scenario. Sometimes you are the same person taking the same role. Sometimes you're not. You've got to read it, and you've got to, make sure you're clear. Essentially, we're about demonstrating our ability to show we have technical knowledge, but we can apply that technical knowledge in a practical, professional way. That's what we're trying to do here. Okay, so that's the exam. We're all okay on that. Just keep your questions coming. I'm quite happy to break off and answer them as they come. Okay. All right. So typical tools that you're going to be asked to use. And the reason I say this is it's just some people get kind of spooked when they're asked to do a press release. It's like, oh my God, what's a press release? Well, this is the typical things that you would be asked to do in an exam. It's not an exhaustive list, but these are the kind of things, you've been at. Business communication is in a form of a letter, an email, a memo, a report, a presentation with accompanying notes. There is a slide option. Become familiar with it. They have been asked to do a heat map, which is like, oh my God, what's that? Well, what could it be? The only thing I know about risk and heat maps is likelihood high or low, impact high or low. That's a risk map. Done. So just keep calm. Yep. In terms of a briefing note, just title it briefing note or working paper. What's a press release? Well, a press release is what companies put out to often reassure the public. I'm sure you've seen them in the newspapers. So just something similar. There isn't, oh, can you give me a pro forma for a press release? There isn't a pro forma. There isn't a pro forma for a report. But it's just, how do professional people in the workplace typically put these things together? As long as you make an attempt to do that, you'll be absolutely fine. Yep. What else do we look at? In the exhibits, you will have seen meetings, you will have seen risk registers, spreadsheets, newspaper articles, industry research articles, chairman's statements, extracts from an annual report, all typical things that you get in the workplace. So it's just trying to condition you to be familiar with all of these things in the workplace. Okay, so that's the tools. Don't be spooked by them. Ang says, can I know that it is advisable to use real life examples to explain, like Enron, COVID? Most definitely, Ang. But what you can't say, oh, well, there's a terrible corporate governance, e.g. Enron. You must explain what you mean by referring to Enron. Yep. So, e.g., there was inappropriate or there was lack of independence in auditors, because in the case of Enron, Arthur Anderson, who were their auditors at the time, were also doing a lot. I think they did about a 25 million audit, and they did a 500 million consultancy job for Enron. So basically, their audit fee paled into significance compared to their consultancy fee. So therefore, what are you going to do? Are you going to be soft on the audit so you can keep going with the consultancy, which is 30 times as big? Of course you are. So yes, it is good to use examples, but must explain them. I think it's good to try and visualize real life. How does this operate in real life? Yeah, what's going on? What's the best way to revise, as the questions are all long? If I only have 2 hours per day to revise, well, Nurul Husna, you have to decide how much time you have and how hard you want to pass this exam. If you're doing 2 hours a day, it depends how long you've been studying for. It depends how much quality those 2 hours are. I think we need to acquire the knowledge. We then need to be practically applying that knowledge with questions, and we also need to be doing some work on the CBE platform. Yep, but you should also be commercially curious. I mean, taking an interest in it's not about just learning the technical stuff. Yeah, if you can look at what businesses are doing around the world and why they're doing that, and asking why, that's going to be useful. So I want to talk about professional skills marks. There's 20 of these. They're not always going to be, equally weighted. They all will be tested. I just want to remind you what each professional skills marks looks at. So you need to understand what each one means. You understand the discrete aspects, and they're marked against a grid. So I think the best way of understanding how the grid works is to look at past exam answers and see the subtle difference between a question which got no marks at all and a question which got all of the marks. So have a look at that. They're the four criteria. I'm sure if you've looked at any past question, you would have seen the marking grid, and that's how it is all there. So in terms of those professional skills, does anyone know what they are? Skepticism, yep. Analysis, yep. Evaluation, commercial acumen, yep. Communication, yep. Analysis, one more. Evaluation, Arifa, well done. All right, well done. So that's exactly what they are. And basically, these skills, you just need to... the other thing about professional skills marks in the exam is where they talk about professional skills will be awarded for, say, skepticism, and then it will show X, Y, Z, A, B, C. Read that whole sentence, because that often gives a very good clue with regards to how you need to be skeptical. Okay. So all of them are covered in every exam. There's discrete aspects to each one. So the discrete aspects that you have, if I'm being skeptical, I'm probing, questioning, and challenging. I'm not taking things at face value. Yep. So just because the chairman says that, well, okay, all the other information in the scenario, in the exhibits, kind of indicates that what the chairman's saying doesn't make any sense. Commercial acumen. Well, commercial acumen is, correct judgment. Would you put £10,000 alloy or, 100,000 ringgit alloy wheels on your Proton Saga? I don't think you would. But if you had some Bugatti or Bentley, you'd probably have to. Yep. So it wouldn't make any sense. Would you put $100,000 kitchen in your $50,000 flat? No, but if you lived in a penthouse apartment in, I don't know, KL Central, you probably have to put a $100,000 kitchen in. Yeah. So that's what commercial acumen looks at. Analysis, are we taking on board all the information? Are we considering it all? Communication, are we communicating correctly? So that's not, it's not just because you do a report and it asks for a report. If you're talking to an HR person in technical accounting language, that's not professional. Yeah. If it asks you to do slides and you don't do them, that's not professional. Yep. So make sure that you not only adopt the correct format, you communicate in an appropriate way that helps your message be understood. And then evaluation, are we taking two sides of the argument? That's what would be important there. Okay, so professional skills marks, have a look. There are some examiner articles on those which you should be familiar with, but they're really important to basically color your answer. They're the lens through which you interpret the answer, and you make sure in crafting your answer that you're being skeptical or you're demonstrating awareness of commercial acumen. Okay, any questions on that? Akmal, my friend had a CBE experience last December in the UK. Suddenly the platform shut down and she needs to repeat the paper in March. I'm afraid it happens to us too. Okay, Akmal, it might. Are you also afraid that there could be a meteorite coming into KL and, ruining your garden or hitting your flat or your car? There is a chance, but I think, if we lived our lives like that, you should stay at home, just sit under the table with a blanket on your head and not go out. I mean, the ACCA have had thousands of students doing CBE exams who have all passed and have all been successful. Yep. Do you drive your car, I wonder, Akmal, or are you worried you might have a crash? Because better not drive if you might have a crash. I mean, I think you want to pass this exam, and to pass the exam, you've got to take it. Okay. It's very rare. It does happen in a tiny percentage of cases, particularly when there was a lot of CBE. The ACCA weren't expecting so many CBEs, but I think a lot of that has been improved. So be optimistic, not pessimistic, would be my advice, Akmal. Yi Lin, hi there. Would like to ask, by any chance we can back up our answer during the exam day? No. To avoid unpredictable event happening. Unfortunately not. To be honest though, Yi, just to give you some insight from my students, who incidentally, they all did their CBE exam last time and they all passed, apart from one. But they all passed, so almost 100% pass rate. But one or two of them were thrown out. So this is a bit of practical advice. They logged onto the platform and the platform chucked them out. So they got in contact with me because I WhatsApp my students all the time, and right until the exam, and they WhatsApp me and said, "Look, I've been thrown out." And normally you have to, apply, 3 weeks in advance. I said, "Look, log back on to," so they got the refund of their money, log back on to do an exam, and they did that. Probably the ACA don't want me just about giving you, this is how it happened. They logged back on, and then they got kicked out again, and they got a refund. And I said, log back on again, which they did, and they did the whole exam and passed it. So if you did get kicked out, my advice would be to log back on. Don't kind of, oh, I've got logged out, what can I do? Come on, you want to pass this exam. It's not going to beat you. And if it throws you out, which is highly unlikely it will, but say it did, you don't just sit there and cry and worry about it. You get back on. Okay, so that's my advice there. So there's no backup, no. Aaron says, if the question requires some element of numerical evaluation, will I still score if I'm able to justify in written terms without showing calculations? I'm not quite sure how you do that. You're going to do, so Aaron, just let me be clear. The question requires numerical evaluation, but you're not going to do any calculations, and you're going to draw a conclusion of numerical information without any numerical evaluation. You're going to have to explain how that works, because I can't quite see how that happens. In terms of should you show calculations, you're normally likely to have to use the numbers than work the numbers, because you've proven you can work the numbers on previous exams. It's more, what do the numbers mean? What conclusion, what consequence of those numbers? That's what you need. You should do your numbers always, Aaron. If you have to do work on your numbers, you might do in the spreadsheet. It takes 1 minute in the spreadsheet. Yep. Narul says, if I copy a certain word from the exhibit without doing any changes, is that allowed, and does it score marks? So just let me understand this, Narul. You want to copy the exhibit the ACCA has provided you into your answer, and for copying ACCA written questions, you want to get a mark. Does anyone have a view whether the ACCA are going to give you any marks for cutting and pasting? Would that be the job of a strategic professional? I mean, it's a bit like photocopying, isn't it? So no, obviously not. But if you, there's a few questions coming through. So you certainly, I would always copy you're not going to get any marks for it. You need to put your own spin, your own take on things. That's what's important. Diane, could I advise what we should and shouldn't do when taking CBE? Well, there's a great fact sheet the ACCA has produced. There's a little video that they've produced. I mean, to be honest, if you watch the video, it's how do I take my CBE exam? And this student is in this beautiful 8-meter high ceiling room with about a 50-inch MacBook monitor, or Apple Mac monitor. It all looks perfect, and I'm sure as students we don't all live in such luxury. So I think you're supposed to have your curtain closed. I think they're just a bit paranoid that people might be holding a book up at the window. It says you've got to have a room with a lock on it. Well, one of my students lived in a studio flat and they still took the exam and passed it. So there's a few things which you have to observe if it's been remotely proctored. Hopefully that helps, Diana. Nur says, for evaluation skills, can I mention? Yes, that's what evaluation is, Nur, so correct. Great, all these questions is fantastic. CBE environment is a bit scared. I'm worried if I waste time to draft slide design. Don't draft slide design, just do it. I mean, basically, I'll talk more about it, but what I would do, I would just I would just kind of do my plan, and then I'm going to use that plan point as a subheading, insert line, and pad it out with you know, an articulated comment, and then my other bullet point plan, I'm going to make a heading, pad it out. That's the way. So it actually makes your life easier as CB environment, and it's less likely that you miss things out. So Ada says she's a bit scared. Okay, get over it, Ada. That's how it is. Get used to it by practicing on the platform and seeing it's nothing to be scared of. If you're scared of something, go and say hello. You know, I'm scared of dogs. Well, go and meet a dog, stroke it. It's not to be scared. It's fine. Go and meet your CBE exam. I think ACCA should consider students to bring your own calculator. Really? Well, the ACCA have to reflect what the workplace is. So in the workplace, do you write things out in pen and paper with a calculator? Or what if you did? That represents high risk to me. I would hope you're using a spreadsheet, and now you're doing that on a shared platform where other people can cross-reference your calculations so there's no errors. So the workplace doesn't use calculators. The workplace doesn't use pens and papers. It uses shared IT platforms. So if you're going to be a relevant accountant of the future, you need to, if you know, who uses a calculator? I haven't used a calculator for years. It's all on spreadsheets in the workplace. So a calculator, no. Wait a minute. Oh, sorry. So Aida said, TB is a bit scared. I'm worried if I waste my time using ePen, eCalculator, etc. ePen. I'm not sure what I think ACCA. I mean, I've never had cause to use a calculator in an SBL exam. I just copy and paste the numbers into the spreadsheet section, do a quick at sum or whatever is done. Yeah, and you submit that spreadsheet and it gets looked at. Kwai Wei Lin. Hi, sir. I noticed you mentioned we wouldn't be allowed scrap paper during the exam. I'm aware this is the case for remote exams, but since in Malaysia we're going to be exam center ourselves, physically we should still be provided the scrap paper and allowed our calculator in, right? You know what? I've got so used to remotely proctored exams because of lockdown. That's how many of them have happened. I'm not 100% sure on that one, Quara, and I think Joanne probably will be able to confirm it. But regardless whether it's allowed or not, what is the point of you writing on a piece of scrap paper and throwing it in a bin compared to writing in the word processing area, making it clear that this is a plan, and then submitting that with your answer? The scrap paper is never going to get seen. The plan you've written on the word processing area of your exam could be seen and therefore has potential to add value to your answer. So sorry, Kwai Lin, I'm not sure exactly on that one, but maybe you can use it. But again, why are you using a calculator? Use a spreadsheet. You can do, if you did ask to do an MPV, you can do it in 1 minute on MPV function on the spreadsheet. It'll take you much longer on a calculator. So become familiar with those shortcuts. Okay, Nuzwan is using okay. I haven't used a calculator for years. In fact, if staff of mine were using calculators, I would be asking them, you know, what are they playing at? You know, do you write letters with pen and ink, or do you write them on word processing? You write them on word processing because it's got spell check. It can be stored, it can be shared, and your calculations can't be. I think I've opened a can of worms about the calculator. Apologies. Yeah, if you can bring a calculator into the exam hall, fine. But you're doing a computer-based exam on the CBE platform. You know, it's like, how would you like to travel? Here's a bicycle, or here's a Rolls Royce. So you're wanting to use the bicycle, or are you wanting to use the spreadsheet, which is the Rolls Royce? I'll leave it up to you, but it's going to take you a lot longer using a calculator. I once attended a briefing by ACCA Malaysia. They said you're allowed to bring a calculator, and the exam centre, okay, fine, absolutely fine if that's what they do. As I say, because of lockdown, I've become completely focused on more remote proctored exams because that's what everyone's had to do. And who knows what might happen in your exam. The ACCA want you to take a paper. In the UK, people had exam centres booked, and then suddenly there was an outbreak of a new variant, boom, over. So what do the ACCA's choices? Well, the only choice is to have a remote proctored exam. Okay, if we're doing applied skills exams with calculators, fine, but please, trust me on this. Spreadsheets have infinite more capacity to do the kind of things you need to do on SBL than a calculator has. Okay, so and it also is a record. You might get your what if you get your calculation wrong? Are you going to kind of take screenshots of your calculator? No, you're not. But if you get your calculation wrong, well, I don't know what it is. If you do it on a spreadsheet and it's wrong, as a marker, I can see your incorrect behavior and your conclusions following the incorrect calculation in the spreadsheet. I apply what's called the own figure rule. So although the calculation is wrong, you don't get a mark for that, but all your conclusions are correct because I can see you got it wrong. That's absolutely fine. Own figure rule will be much easier to apply in that situation. So would you show us how to use the information presented in the exhibits to construct our answer? Most definitely, Vincent. I will do that for you later. Does skepticism skills need to have negative tone when we explain the answers? You need to be professional. So if you were to talk to your boss, you wouldn't say, that's rubbish. You would say, well, I'm just a little concerned about the belief that you think this. That is how you would behave in the workplace. You wouldn't say to your boss, I think that's rubbish. That wouldn't be professional. So yes, it's not it's professionally questioning is what I'd say there, Nur. So good question. No, Huawei Lin saying, just wanted to clarify. Please, sorry if I'm coming across a bit hard on some of you, but I'm here to help you. My heart is here to help you, right? I'm not here. I'm not having a go if it's coming across incorrectly. So please, that's maybe just my style. I want you to pass the exam, and if you don't agree with anything I'm saying or you disagree with anything I'm saying, boom, come at me, challenge me. Okay. Whoa, loads of great questions. Fantastic, gang. There are some YouTube videos published by the ACCA. Are you sure they're published by the ACCA? If they are, the ones on CBE preparation are great. Is it worth to waste some time to look at it? Well, I wouldn't say it's wasting time. It's actually very good use of your time. Yep. So get onto them. Yep. Someone sent some links in the chat box, so thank you for that. Are spell check auto? I don't think spell check does happen on the platform actually, but it doesn't matter as long as I can make sense of what you're saying. There are no negative marks on ACCA, and there's no marks for poor grammar or anything like that. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'd say there. No spell check. Wow, keep coming. Tim, sir, if we submit our final answer along with the answer plan, do we lose out on professional marks? No, because you title it plan and you make it clear to the marker that this is a plan. Yeah. Practically, you need somewhere to plan an answer. So then your answer is the only thing that will be judged as professional. Okay. Is there any need to use flag? Yees, I don't know what flag means. What? But I've not. The fact that I don't know what it means. The only flag I'm aware of is if you miss something out and you come back to it. Is that what you mean? I mean, there's multiple questions, but you flag if you've missed something out, I suppose. But it's not like a question where you should be able to answer every task. You should at least try to answer every task. Okay, very good, very good, very good. So that's professional skills marks. That is fantastic. Some great questions coming in. Please keep them coming in. I want to now talk about what is the difference between Strategic Business Leader and other exams. And the key difference, I think, is, as I've explained, is the rationale. Yep. It's basically an applied exam. Yep. It's application of technical knowledge in a leadership context, in a workplace context. You need to demonstrate professionalism. Okay, so that's why it's different. It's not learn all this technical stuff and regurgitate it. I personally question the relevance of some of that, because you'll have computer software that does that for you when you have a real job. SBL is something you will use most in your workplace. So it's a great exam. Why do people fail SBL? Well, for a number of reasons. Assuming that you've done some proper preparation and been advised by someone who knows what they're talking about. People tend to fail SBL because of poor time management. The only way to really understand that is to get in the car and drive and make a mess up, and then reflect on why you made that mess up. So practice to time. Remember, you only need to get 50 marks. Anything more than that is wasted energy. And but you need to have structured, balanced approach to each area. So that's really important. You don't read and plan things correctly. And that's really important as well. Sometimes, we have a little bit of a lot of adrenaline in the exam. We're a little bit worried. And that hijacks our brain. So there's techniques we need to apply there. We don't have very good business writing skills because we don't read any business English. If you read business English, the language used will start to rub off on you. And professional skills marks aren't really observed. So let me talk about each of these. So the first one is time management. Yep. It's really important on time management that when time is up, you move on to the next question. Now that might sound simple, but a lot of people, I got 46, I got 44, just missed out. You didn't just miss out. You basically there was no way you could be given any more marks. You probably got 44 out of 80, which was a good mark. But you couldn't write any more because I couldn't give you any more marks because 44, you only looked at 80% of the paper. So you've got to do 100% of the paper, and that gives you a really good opportunity to score the marks you need to. Okay. So strict time budget. You've got a 4-hour exam. That's 240 minutes in total. My suggestion, which is based on experience of working with lots of students, would be probably about 40 minutes reading and planning. Now, if it's going to take longer for you to read and plan, okay, it might take you a little bit longer. It might be 60, and there you have to adjust this whole calculation accordingly. But if you are a regular reader of business English, you should be able to, and I'm going to give you a little tip on how to take the thing apart in a moment, but you should be able to do it in 40 minutes. So that means we've taken 40 minutes from 4 hours, 240 minutes. We've got 200 minutes left, and we've got 80 marks to get. Okay, because remember, the professional skills marks take no time to acquire. So literally we are dividing 200 by 80. Yep. And if we do that, it gives us 2.5 minutes a mark. Okay, that's 2.5 minutes a mark. I would advise you to treat it like a project management exercise in mark acquisition. Okay, project management. So you have got a 10-mark question. You've got 25 minutes to do it. I'm looking at my watch. It's 35. It's 10 marks. It's 25 minutes. I'm finishing this at 100 hours. Start, finish. That's what I would do. Yep. And once the finish is finished, I'm off. I'm leaving. Okay. So that's really, really important. Yep. So Joanne has put into the chat box CBE software guidance, which I really recommend that you have a look at. Aaron got 49% a few sittings ago. I left one question blank given the time constraints. I'm not quite sure what you mean by time constraints, Aaron. If you were managing time, you should have had all that time. However, I tried overcompensating by maximizing the other questions. Well, that's why you failed, unfortunately, to be blunt, Aaron. The first 50% of the marks are the easiest to acquire. The second 50% are harder. Okay, so your job is to put yourself in the position of getting the first 50% of all the questions, and a little bit more, hopefully, to be safe. But if you do that, that is the easiest way to pass. If you believe I can spend an extra half an hour on a question, bumping it up to 100%, that's not going to happen. You might bump it up another 10 points, but actually you spent half an hour to take that, and that was inefficient use of your time. So please believe me when I say you must manage time strictly and give appropriate time and then move on. The first 50 are the easiest to acquire, first 50% of each task. Joanne has come up and said, I assume there's a typo. 80 minutes supposed to mean 80 marks. Yes, you're right. No, that's me, typo, apologize. So 200 divided by 8, 200, I think it's 200 minutes divided by 80. It's just the way it's come across. So that means 2.5 minutes per mark. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to give you a practical demonstration of how I deal with the scenario and the exhibits, but I break it down, and I'm going to show you that in a practical way. So hopefully that helps. Tim has said, in my practice, I came across a question requirement that was hard to understand. So because of that, I didn't answer the question well. Do you have any suggestions on how to solve it? Okay, so a question I'm not sure of. I don't know what it is. I'm coming right up to it. So I step back and I think, what's this about? Maybe come in from another side. Yep. But sometimes when you're right up against it, I can't see it. So come back, think about it. In what context is this question? What's it about? I'm not going to miss this question because I'm not going to fail my exam. Okay? Or, I don't know, just leave it. Okay? See you in September with that attitude. I'm not saying that's your attitude, Tim, but that is what you need to have within you. This exam is not going to beat you. You're going to nail this exam. But you're not going to nail it if you look at a question that you can't do. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, that's not going to help you pass. All right? So fight it. Fight it. Okay. So I break it into paragraphs, label the paragraphs. I'm going to show you, highlight the key things. What does the story tell? Can I relate this to real life? You normally can. Yeah, you normally can. Picture it. Make it real. That helps me. Reading and planning. Well, I would tend to copy and paste on a CBE exam, and I would then have some brainstormed headings. I'll be looking at the keywords, which I can see because I've copied and pasted them down. I'm thinking about the answer format. I'm thinking about the verb. I'm thinking about the rule of and. Often people miss out the rule of and. What do I mean by the rule of and? Well, the rule of and often splits a question. So here is a question. Discuss the benefits and drawbacks of World Wear Alliance membership to PC Airlines in determining its future aims and objectives. Yep. So sometimes in the midst of exam kind of scaredness, we miss out. Yep. And you really need to break this down. So what we have here is and benefits and drawbacks, aims and objectives. So if we were to look at, we need to spot the marking guide as well. So if we're looking at that, discuss whether or not the objectives of the directors of a quoted company is likely to conflict with those of the shareholders. So we need to break that down. Yep. Objectives of the directors are 4-ish. Objectives of the shareholders, 4-ish. Conflict, maybe 2. Or did you see it as 4, 4, and 4? You know, there's flexibility in marking. It's not absolutely, it might be up to 5, up to 5, up to 4, maximum of 10. That tends to be how the marking schemes are set. Yep, so you always need to have a plan of action. You also need to be thinking about where the marks are going to come from. And also be aware that marking schemes are fairly flexible. They're not rigid half and half. There's normally a little bit of flex on each. Okay, very good. All right, when we're kind of presenting our answers, what do we need to do? Well, the main thing I would say is you need to make the marker love you. Yep. So you need to help them mark your script. To help them mark your script and make their job easy, you need to have a really good layout. You need to have subheadings, and if there's 4 marks, 4 separate little paragraphs would be great. Yeah. Leave white space. Leave gaps. Really important. Yep. That's what you need to do. It makes life so much easier for the marker. Yep. You should start strong. So it's a bit like going for an interview, and when you go for an interview, say good morning, and I think it's like, oh, you're a bit of an idiot. Whereas if hello, nice to meet you, that's how you should start, because psychologically that makes the marker think better of you. There is no negative marking, but you want the marker to be in a positive frame about you. And if you start strong with a strong opening statement, so think carefully how you open your answer, not like it just all it doesn't instill confidence. So be careful. Just to show you, and I've done this with students a while ago with the examining team, and we got some markers to mark 2 identical scripts, and we gave them a script that looked like this, and we asked them to mark it with a marking scheme, and they marked it, and that was fine. And then we gave the same answer presented like this, and they marked that. Okay, but just going back to this one, if we then said, here is a script, here's a marking scheme, mark it, and you've got 3 minutes, compared to this one, it got more marks. This one did. Why? Well, just because you help me navigate it more easily, and when I'm under time pressure, which many markers are, that's going to be the proper thing for you to do. Yeah, if you can on your points, you get a mark for the first salient point, and then if you follow on with a so what, a why, a consequence, an implication, and explain that, that will get you an extra mark. Yeah. So that tends to be how the marking scheme goes. But don't just, some people think 2 marks a point. No, it's not 2 marks a point. It's a mark for a good, decent point drawn from information in this scenario. And then if you take that and talk about the so what, then you potentially can get another mark as well. Right. How long does a marker need to mark one paper? Depends how many papers they've marked before it. No, I'll explain if we have a chance what markers do. I'm not sure what you mean, Wei Kang. XD, or what does XD mean? Does it mean you can use bullet points during the exam? Well, you can do. It's like I'm a 3 Michelin starred chef, and I style my food perfectly on a plate. I bring it to the client says, or I can just throw the food on a plate. It's the same food, it's going down the same hole. What do you think? What would you think there? Would you think would that be a good thing, to just throw the food on a plate, or would it be nicely styled? What do you think I'd be able to charge more money for, or in exam terms, get more marks for? Throwing it back at you, Fu. Nice style, yes, because that's going to get marks. It doesn't take much to style something, so please make an effort to do so. Yep, great. Okay. So my main thing I would say to you is that it is absolutely essential to try to practice a mock exam to time on the ACCA CBE platform. Yeah, so important. Yep. And I would say to you, would you learn to swim by reading a book? I don't think you would. Yep. And what I want to have a little look at now is I want to give you a practical demonstration of how I would first of all deal with the December 2020 exam. And what I've done here is I've actually recorded this to make it more quick. So I run online courses, and I find if I do an online course, or if I do a course live, it might take me 3 hours. If I record it and edit it and speed it up and fill in the blanks and all the rest of it, that might take me an hour. So we can get more out of our session together and hopefully get your concentration. I've kind of taken what might have taken me an hour and made it into about 15 minutes. So this is the December 2020 exam. This is how, if I'm you looking at that exam for the first time, how do I deal with it? Okay, so I've got a video for you that is going to be played. So if we can, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to talk about how you use your time effectively in the December exam. So I think the video that we're going to play video 1. And that is, just give us a moment, and that is going to come up on your screen, and we're going to have a look at this. One moment. Whilst we're waiting, would you like me to sing a song? Tell me a song you'd like me to sing, and I'll just sing it while we're waiting. Country road, hey Jude. How are we doing with that video? Is it loading? Thank you, Ada. Thank you.
Sorry, Sean, just give a few moments.
No problem, no problem. I can sing some more songs.
Oh, yeah.
Britain's Got Talent star, maybe, Aaron, maybe. We can see it. Fantastic. I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to let you give all your concentration to this video, and I will speak to you in just over 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm on the ACCA CBE platform here, and I have assigned myself December 20, and I just want to go through what would I do if I was faced with an exam like you're going to face in June, and how do I deal with everything? What do I start with first? People can sometimes be a little overwhelmed with all the information that is available, and my advice would be keep it very simple really, and start at the beginning. So the beginning is an overview. So here we've got an overview of the organization. I've just highlighted one or two things in this exhibit, and what we can see here, just the highlight function is there, but just to speed things up, I've highlighted we have an organization called Bloom Conservation, which is a not-for-profit charitable business. It was set up by a lady called Dana Bloom. She was an entrepreneur with a passion for wildlife. She set this wildlife park up in the country of Zealand, and since it was founded, it's provided a lot of management of some of the world's most endangered and threatened animals. She has also then gone on further and run programs which protect animals around the world in their natural habitats in 15 countries. To do that, they employ both local experts and volunteers. So then in the second paragraph, it says much of BCO's income comes from donations, as you would expect in a charity. It then goes on to say that G-Land, the country in which the wildlife park exists, has been suffering from economic recession for several years, and quite a lot of charitable organisations in the country have actually struggled. BCO has managed to survive by cost-cutting and rationalising things, but obviously it's not easy to be raising money in such economic times. And then the third part of the overview says BCO has a board of trustees, and that's great. Obviously there's going to be some kind of reference, I suspect, to corporate governance. So yep, we're going to see something there, but yeah. And then it talks right at the end that they've got a new chairperson, Rani Jaffels, who has a strong commercial background, having been chief executive at several leading corporations in G-Land. So that's the introduction. So what am I going to do next? Should I read the other exhibits? Well, I'm actually not going to read the other exhibits, because without context, the information which is included in them doesn't really mean much. So to contextualize the exhibits, what I would then do, having read the overview, is look at each of the tasks and make a mental note of what those tasks are, and then try to connect those tasks to each of the exhibits. So let's have a look at task 1. What's it about? Just a general overview of what it's talking about. Here we see task 1 is asking us to do a briefing note for the CFO, which talks about agency relationships for a charity. It then talks about a 2-tier board, which there was no mention in the overview, so I assume there's probably an exhibit about that. And then how the mission and strategic objectives meet its key stakeholder needs. So again, I'm probably going to be looking for an exhibit talking about mission and strategic objectives. So that's fine. Part B asks about financial and non-financial performance in the last financial year, giving reasons and implications of the results. Okay, so I'll be looking for some kind of reporting information. So first bit, corporate governance-y, second bit, finance, non-financial. That's fine. Here's task 2, and I've highlighted a couple of things here, and it says in a recent report BCO sets out 3 strategic objectives for the next 5 years, and the external environment is going to impact on these objectives, and therefore for 15 marks we've asked to prepare a report which evaluates the extent to which external environment could impact on strategic objectives. Okay. Part B asks us to prepare 3 slides with notes. So when slide questions come up, most of the marks are going to be awarded for the notes. There's 15 marks here. There's 3 slides, 5 marks a slide. I would say probably 1 mark for the slide and 4 marks for a good set of notes. So probably 4 nice sentences to represent a note. That's how I'm thinking. Okay, so that's talking about IT, and it's talking about the external environment. So let's think about that. Task 3 asks us, I'm just going to close task 2. Task 3 asks us to prepare a report which evaluates the current risk register. So again, I will need to link task 3 to a specific exhibit, and the adequacy of the risk mitigating activities. 15 marks. Okay, that's fine. I'm then going to look at task 4. Task 4 for 10 marks asks us to look at the importance of the board of trust, the importance for the board to have a sufficient mix of skills and diversity, and the importance of continuing professional development for the board members. Okay, so diverse boards and CPD. Okay. So I've got those clear. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to look at each of these exhibits. So let me just close these tasks down and look at each of the exhibits. So the first exhibit is an extract from the annual report, and it talks about the mission, it talks about the vision and aim, So what I would now do is I'm going to make a little bit of a note in the word processing area, which exhibit relates to which task. So I've titled it up plan here, just so it's clear to the marker that this isn't an answer. So for each of these tasks, I'm going to say for task 1, I think exhibit 2 on extracts from the annual report is going to be quite useful. Let's have a look at exhibit 3. Could there be anything else? I think exhibit 2 is going to help with 1B and also with 1A part 3. Exhibit 3 gives us a overview of the leadership, and there was a little bit of corporate governance, if you recall, in the first part of task 1. So again, I'm going to go back to my word processing, and I'm going to say that I'm also going to have a little look at exhibit 3 for task 1 to help me put together an answer. Okay, so just a makeup of the board. I think also there may be a potential here for task 4. If you remember task 4, it talked about the skills mix of the board. Maybe we could bring something about these board members as an example of inappropriateness. So I'm going back to my word processor, and I'm also just going to make a little note that for task 4, I'm also going to maybe have a little referral to exhibit 3. Let's have a look at exhibit 4. Exhibit 4 is giving us some numbers. We go from the top. It gives the income, it gives the expenditure, it gives quite a few KPIs there, which we'll be able to comment on. We can see how they've dropped or gone up year to year. We'll be able to actually give some context of whether the figures are attractive or not. I would say that is going to be very useful for the second part of task 1, which was talking about financial and non-financial. So we're going to also say on task 1 that we're going to look at exhibit 4. That's going to be useful for us. If I then have a look at exhibit 5, what is happening here? This is talking about what's going on in the world. It's talking about how charities must change. I think where this is kind of maybe making me think it might be relevant, I think if you remember task 2 was talking about IT, wasn't it? I think this is task 2, and task 2 was talking about the external environment. So I think there's potentially something in this exhibit 5 which is going to help us with task 2. So on task 2, I'm going to say exhibit 5 is definitely worth a look. Let's move on to exhibit 6. Expand this out so we can see it a bit more. So exhibit 6 is basically showing us a risk register, and there was a very specific question on risk and the risk mitigating activities. So this was task 3, and so task 3 I'm going to look at exhibit 6. It gives lots of information. And then the final thing is talking about charity leadership. It's talking about what's been going on, how charities need to kind of improve. So I would say that in that one, I think there's definitely some potential to talk about the external environment. So I think if I go back to word processor, if I was to mention, where are we? Task 2, I think I might bring a little bit on exhibit 7. But I think there was also a question which was asking us about IT. So I suppose, yeah, we could maybe
it gives us just about the fact that, you know, how IT could improve things. So yeah, maybe also that's task 2, isn't it? Exhibit 7. So what I have here, I've got a little plan of the exhibits. Having digested and read each exhibit, I now have linked them to each task. And rather than me having to read all 7 exhibits again to try to make sense of them, in the little exercise I've just spent a few minutes doing now, there is clarity to me between which exhibit is most linked to which task, and that's going to save me time in the exam. So that's a top tip to save you a little bit of time.
Okay, that's great. I'm just going to change screens. Any comments you have on that, please pop them in and I will answer them. Yeah, the only thing I got through was Noor saying it wasn't very clear. I'm not sure, Noor, what was happening there. Do you have other people watching Netflix in your house or something? The reason I created that video was often you can get lag if I'm on the CBE platform recording a live video event, it just sometimes lags a little bit. It can do anyway, so it's safer to record what I did. And also I can pack 3 times more information, and all that highlighting and everything takes quite a long time to do, and to click between pages would take much longer when it's live. So yeah, that would be a technique. Najla says it's a great technique, try and practice it. Yep, really important. Would there be many versions of questions since there will be more than one session during the exam? There could be, Ada, but they will all be reviewed in a lot of detail by the examining team. So they would all have equal kind of levels of competence and difficulty. There wouldn't be one harder or less hard. So yeah, what do you think? What do you think of that? Something you're going to do? Tim thinks it's useful. Sound is everything. Yep. It will save time, but it requires practice. So I was going to put a little poll on the screen for you. Yeah, I was going to put a poll up just on the CBE. Just give me 1 second, and we'll launch that. Terry has asked, what if the particular exhibit can be used in a few tasks? What exam skill can I use to prevent wasting time rereading the same exhibit again? Well, I think in the video, Terry, didn't we show that the exhibit was used in multiple tasks? And we only, having done that detailed evaluation, then went back to the appropriate exhibits. So we're not wasting time doing that. I only went back to 2 or 3 exhibits instead of all 6, because I'd thought clearly about which exhibits were relevant to which task. I highlighted the important points. The important points that were shouting out to me at the introduction on that question was the fact that it was not a profit-making business. It had a dual board. So I was kind of conscious and aware of reference to things in that area. Yeah, be careful you don't highlight too much though, Tim. That's what you have to be a little careful of. Okay. So maybe I'm going to launch a poll here. I just wonder if it is possible, before I launch a poll, could we put 0 as an option? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and more than 5. I'm just going to put this, just could we have a 0 option? Okay, I'm going to launch a poll here. So this poll is asking you, how many of you have done an SBL exam 2 times and maybe got it marked on the ACCA platform? Well, I'm very impressed. Someone has done more than 5. I didn't know you could load 5 exams onto the ACCA platform. So past ACCA exams, but most of us have not done it. Yeah. You've had it marked, you've done it 2 times, you've been on the CBE platform and you've done it to time. Is that what you're saying to me? 5. Tim, I'm questioning 5. Just there's 4 people apparently done more than 5 exams. I'd be really interested how you did that. Someone's done 5 exams 2 times on the platform and had it marked. Amazing. Okay. So that's a bit like going driving without a driving instructor. You should try to get it marked by someone who knows what they're doing. Use other sets of questions on the CBE platform. Okay, that's a bit like learning to drive on a bicycle. I would always like to learn to drive in a car. So the exam is an ACCA CBE exam that you're sitting, and it would be best when practicing for an ACCA CBE exam test to use an ACCA exam on the CBE platform. Not Word, not Excel, on the CBE platform. Akmal, it depends. If your institution has set, I do it with my students. I have booked some space on the ACCA CBE platform, and I then get them to log on as an ACCA candidate, and then their exam is submitted to me, and I also get some other real SBL markers of the real exam to mark it. So that's what I do. So it really depends, Akmal, on your institution and whether they have set that up. I know a lot of institutions haven't set that up, but that's what I do because I know that that's how it's can be done. I mean, I also do something where I actually just run a mock weekend, so you can just sign up to do a mock on the platform 2-time course. So you should look if there's any options for you to do that. It's good to get them marked. I would stick to ACCA questions. I would exhaust all of those first. So essentially, quite more than 50% of you have not done it at all, and I don't think anyone has had one marked on the platform. So I'm not scolding you about that. I'm just pointing out to you that if you are preparing for your driving test, yes, you can go out in the car with your friend who can maybe give you a few tips. But I think as I get better, I would be going out with a driving instructor who knows the route of the driving test, knows the key things that they're going to be looking at, and get some feedback from them. So that's something you should really consider. Yeah, really need to make sure that that happens, because you're not in the best position if you haven't done something to time and got it marked. Tim has said, would I be okay with marking your scripts? Tim, you can email me and and we can see. But there's quite a lot of you on here. I think there was over 200 on here at one stage. So that's quite a lot. I do a mock day, and I'm not here to talk about that. But if you're interested, email me. But I think it's really important. It's really important that you do something 2 times. You can do your own stuff, maybe get a study buddy to mark it or something like that. But the ACCA provides you with your own constructed response area. You should be looking at it. Okay, alrighty. Right, let me, so how are we doing time-wise? I think, should we have, are we okay? You tell me, Tim says too many scripts. Not necessarily, because I know the SBL markers, so I can get some of those if there is too many. But how are we feeling? How are we still up for it? Are we still lively? Do we need 10 minutes to have a cup of tea? You tell me. I think we have a 10-minute comfort break. Yeah, 10-minute tea break, that would be great. So it's 10 past on the clock. Can we come back at, say, 25 past? So that gives you ultimate time to put the kettle on, etc., etc. So it says 9:11 where I am in the UK, but let's just stick to the 11. So if it's 11 past the hour at the moment, I would like you back here at 25 past the hour. That will be fantastic. So I will see you in about 13, 14 minutes. Okay, see you soon. Okay, gang, that is 25 past. Just very quickly, you can see me, you can hear me. Is that correct? Put a little answer in the box to tell me that you're here and you can hear, you can see. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's great for that response. Just had a question. Apologies if this, I might have got that wrong. Tim asks, what is constructed response? Maybe I've got the term wrong, but there is an area on the platform where you can actually practice your own answers, like a CBE mock-up, where you can just use that as a scratch pad or like a piece of digital paper, which is the CBE platform that allows you. So that's what I meant. If I got the term wrong, I thought it was called constructed response. Yes, that's right. It's you log on, you can do your own work on the platform. So you could even get a question out of an exam kit or off the ACCA website, print it out and just then write your answers to it on the platform. You could also upload a question and assign it to yourself. So you could self-assign, and there's quite a few questions which you can assign to yourself and then you can look at and mark. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. Okay, it says Shima raised a hand. Shima, do you have a question or have you just accidentally raised your hand? Just if you are asking a question, I think you might have just clicked something. You don't need to raise your hand, just throw in your question to me and I will get right back to you. We okay, Shima? Yep. Okay. So what I want to just go back to is we talked about using our time effectively, and I talked about how I looked at a question and I broke it down the way in which I just broke it down. What I want to now do is look at an actual question and to talk about how I would break the actual question down. So to do that, what I want to do like we just did, and we're going to pop another summary of a recording I made just before this session, just so it's streamed without any jumps and it all came through perfectly for you. So let's have a look at that, and then tell me what you think, and then we will we'll have some discussion afterwards. What if you disagree with anything or you have any more questions on it? So there's a video going to be loaded. Again, if we have to wait a little bit, I'll sing you another song, but hopefully this will be loaded. I don't have to sing. Perfect. So I'm going to mute myself and turn my video off, and the video is going to start.
So the question that I want to have a look at is task 1A. Let's have a look at task 1A. What I'm going to do to help me make sure I don't miss anything out is I'm going to copy these into my word processing area. So I've titled up answer plan, and I'm literally just going to copy that down. So what I'm seeing is 12 marks. I've got 3 parts. So I think the rough approximation of each of these would be, I'm going for a 4, I'm going for a 4, and I'm going for a 4, and I need to manage my time accordingly. As I said earlier, it's absolutely critical that we manage our time. So if we think the exercise we conducted to begin with, where we allocated each exhibit to the tasks and we read and we understood, it's going to take us approximately 40 minutes. It's a 4-hour. Therefore going to, on each of these, going to be spending 10 minutes. I'm going to be spending 10 minutes, and I'm going to be spending 10 minutes. Yep, that's how much time I've got. And I actually, in my answer, would probably, when I'm going to write answer, I'm going to do this, start, whatever the time I'm starting it is, and
we've gone black on the screen.
Finish it is.
I'm not sure. It seems to have gone blank on me. Maybe we might just want to replay that.
Just let me replay it again.
No problem at all. A couple of people went black as well. It might just be an internet thing.
To get, so 200 divided by 80 gives me 2.5 minutes per mark. So I'm therefore going to, on each of these, going to be spending 10 minutes. I'm going to be spending 10 minutes, and I'm going to be spending 10 minutes. Yep, that's how much time I've got. And I actually, in my answer, would probably, when I'm going to write answer, I'm going to do this, start, and whatever the time I'm starting it is, and whatever the time I need to finish it is, I'm going to do that on every. Obviously, if you take longer reading and planning, you need to adjust your timings accordingly. So looking at this question, we've got 3 parts. I'm going to concentrate on the first part to begin with, but my answer is going to be coloured by the professional skills marks requirement, which are awarded for commercial acumen in demonstrating understanding of the organisational issues relevant to BCO. So BCO is a charity, and obviously the commercial acumen issues with regards to a charity. So let's have a look at A Part 1. And A Part 1 says the specific nature of the principal-agency relationships of the BCO as a charitable organisation. So what am I going to do here? Well, when I think about agency relationships, in a traditional corporate world, we have the principal, who is the shareholder, and we have the agent, who is the directors who are appointed by the principal to act on their behalf. But here we have a charity. So I think I need to get 4 marks. I think I will begin my answer with an explanation of what a principal-agent relationship is. I think I'm then, so get a mark for that. I will then talk about who the principal is in this context. I'll talk about and what they're there to do. And maybe I'll talk about the agent and what they're to do. So there's 3 marks. Maybe I can craft another mark talking specifically about a charity. So that's my plan. So going here, I'm going to start with 1A1. I'm going to talk about the relationship. So we're talking about, we're going to talk about the principal stroke agency relationship. I'm going to talk about principal in BCO. I'm going to talk about the agent in BCO, and I'm going to talk about relationship between them. So for each of those, I would maybe aim for a mark. We are aiming for a total of 4 marks, although we don't need to get 4 marks. We need to, 2 or 3 would be more than we need. Let's now take my plan, and what I would do with my plan, I've done a kind of brainstorm. That's enough. That's 4 marks. I focused on the marks. I'm just going to check, is that what the question says? The specific nature of the principal agent relationship of the BCO as a charitable organization. Does my plan deal with that? Yep. Okay. I'm going to take my plan and I'm going to turn each of them into a little bullet point. And what I'm going to say below each one is an articulated sentence explaining the principal agency relationship. So what I'm going to say about principal agency relationships is that a principal, maybe put a slash there, a principal agency relationship is one where the principal devolves responsibility to carry out the tasks needed to operate a well-governed charity to their agents, and the agents are expected to carry out these tasks in the best interests of the principal. So I'll get a mark for that. In the context of the charity, BCO, who is the principal? So in terms of the principal, in the context of BCO, I'd say the Board of Trustees acts as the principal. If you make a spelling mistake, there is no negative marking, so don't worry about that. And I talk about their responsibility is that BCO has good governance. Their responsibility is to act in the interest of all stakeholders, and that includes donors to the charity, but also volunteers and animal experts. And then the agent in BCO, I would suggest here, is the management board. And they've been given that responsibility by the principal, who's the Board of Trustees, and those agents must carry out their tasks to the best of their ability and perform to the standards that the board expects of them. So I think we're going to get 3 marks for that. Let me finish off with what the relationship is. So I think I'd finish this by saying the relationship between the board and the trustee is often described as a fiduciary one, fiduciary. Again, no penalties for spelling mistakes. This means that the management board carry out their tasks on behalf of the board in exchange for a reward in terms of a salary for their services, and must behave in the best interests of the trustee board. So what have I done there? Well, I've got equal weight to my answer. There's 4 marks. I've done a subheading. That is really easy for the marker to follow. There's 4 points, there's 4 marks, and that's a great answer. As I've written a start and finish time, I check my watch and I then move on to the next requirement, which asks us to talk about the advantages for BCO of having a 2-tier board structure. And I think reading this question, there's probably more opportunity than maybe in the first one to demonstrate a little bit of commercial acumen. We did kind of bring commercial acumen into this a little by saying, acting in the best interests of the stakeholders, but there's probably more scope in part 2. So let's have a look at part 2. So let's now have a look at part 2, where we're asked to look at the advantages for the BCO of having a 2-tier board structure. Again, it's 4 marks, 2.5 minutes a mark if we're using that time management approach would give us 10 minutes. So in the same way, I'm going to write my start and I'm going to write my finish time. So it's asking about two-tier boards, which again is testing some of our corporate governance knowledge. If I was to do a quick brainstorm on why two-tier boards are a good idea, I think I'd say the following. Two-tier boards will give you clear segregation of duties. A two-tier board structure will also facilitate much wider stakeholder involvement. It's also going to give the supervisory board direct power over management. What else? Well, maybe I'm struggling to come up with another point here. And if that's the case, well, I've got 3. We need to get 4 marks. So I have got 75% of my answer to this question. So for now, I'm quite happy. So I'm now going to take each of these points and I'm going to expand them like I did before into subheadings. And under each heading, I'm going to give an articulated, explained sentence or 2. So the first point I'd say is that a two-tier board provides clear segregation between those that manage the company and those that control it for the benefits of the wider BCO stakeholders. I'm then going to talk about wider stakeholder involvement. Underline that, make it bold. And I'm going to say a charity such as BCO has a wide range of stakeholders, and by arranging a two-tier board structure, it will facilitate the ability to add representatives from a wider range of stakeholders. And that's not going to be possible if there was just a unitary board. So that would be a benefit. And then my final point, again, just taking my brainstormed bullet points and making them an underlined subheading. Having a two-tier board will give the trustee board direct power over management. So there's my answer to A part 2. I didn't get all 4 points, but I got 75%, so I'm happy with that. Let's now move on to task A part 3. And again, 4 marks, 10 minutes. How does the BCO's mission and strategic objectives meet its stakeholder needs? Well, what I'm going to have to do here is, first of all, go back to Exhibit 2. And I can see the mission is to protect and conserve our wildlife for future generations. So the question is asking us, how does the mission link with stakeholder needs? I think maybe explain what the mission is and talk about the stakeholders. Would be wildlife, including as one of the stakeholders, so that's definitely in line. It then says, how does the objectives work? We can see here we've got a first objective, ensuring that 100 threatened species are protected and returned to their natural habitat. Well, again, I would argue that a stakeholder would be of BCO would be these threatened species, as would be the communities where these species come from. So that's going to be in line. So there's another point. Second objective point says invest in 100 wildlife habitat projects across the world. Provide training and education for local staff, volunteer and communities. Well, again, you could argue that a key stakeholder of BCO would be wildlife habitats, would be volunteers, would be local staff and communities who with better education could help make a better world for wildlife. So again, I think that's in line. So there's 3 out of 4. And if I said the third objective, ensure 1 million people are better connected with nature through education and awareness, well, if I did that, that is going to again be congruent with the needs of the broader stakeholders of BCO. So talk about the mission for a mark, talk about each objectives for a mark each, and that will get me 4. So what am I going to do? I'm going to now just close this Exhibit 2, and I'm going to start with mission of BCO. I'll give an introduction. A mission is a general statement of the reasons why business exists. Let me just correct that, exists. And it states that the mission in preserving and conserving wildlife for future generations. The stakeholders of BCO will be donors, volunteers, and the wildlife themselves, which will all be beneficiaries of the mission's stated aim. So that would be a mark for that. I'm then going to look at each of the objectives. So let's talk about each objective. So objective 1 would be ensuring that the 100 threatened species are protected and returned to the environment or their habitat, and this objective protects threatened wildlife and the habitats where they come from, therefore very much in line with stakeholder needs. If we then look at objective 2, Objective 2 is invest in 100 wildlife habitats across the world. Well, by pursuing that objective, staff of BCO, volunteers and local wildlife communities, they're all going to benefit from this objective being achieved, and thus stakeholder needs will be satisfied here also. And then if we have a look at objective 3, ensure 1 million people are better connected with nature through education. Well, if the wider population are more educated on wildlife issues, the natural world in which they live is going to be a safer place for them to live. And again, this is going to benefit the stakeholders of BCO. So maybe if we just gave an extra little underline and a bold of each of the bold. Just to make it easy for the marker, always make the marker's job as easy as you can. Then they're going to easily be able to tick and award you a mark for each of those points. So by presenting it in the way we presented it, please take note of that. We've given an explanatory sentence. We've highlighted what we're going to say with a subheading. Just the layout of that, you will agree, is really useful for the markers to follow, and we've got 11 out of 12 points, which is way more than we need to pass. So fantastic, well done. The other thing that we did well there was we focused on the requirements given in each of the tasks, and if you refer to the examiner's report, you will see that those students who were weak in answering this question just gave generic explanations on agency relationships, didn't really focus on advantages of two-tier board structures, just general governance issues, and they didn't really consider how stakeholders' needs were being met when they were talking about the mission and objective. So important that we follow the requirements carefully to maximize our marks.
Okay, gang. How did you find that? Let me check the question panel and let me have a look. My answers were not in a briefing note format. Fatin, you're going to just have to remind me exactly. Did I not title it briefing notes? I thought I did. If you could get back to me, Fatin. Okay. I need to go back on the video, and it might mess up the bandwidth. But I am pretty certain I did do it in a briefing note format. Let me have a look just to be clear. It's potentially this. Let me have a look. I'm going to go on to test reach. I'm not sharing my screen on this, but I might do if it's. To be honest, I'm pretty certain I did. But if your point was that the format was different to what you've been taught a briefing note format is, I would suggest that can you tell me what the pro forma is for briefing notes? And I'm going to preempt your answer. There isn't a pro forma. It would be, how would you professionally communicate briefing notes? You acknowledge the request, do it in a form that would be appropriate in the context of the question asked, and that would be absolutely fine. you might not have been visible on the screen, but I'm pretty certain that I would have titled it briefing notes and just followed on from there. The briefing note was part 1, 2, and 3. I would have just done it at the beginning of the question and then dealt with 2 and 3 as a subsequent follow-on from part 1. So that will be my point on that, Fatin. I always confuse. Oh, well, Fatin confuses the format of briefing notes with briefing paper. Really? What's the confusion? Tell me what your confusion is. Yeah, I mean, well, one would be titled briefing paper, one would be titled briefing notes. You're not going to get penalized for nuances between notes and briefing paper, but the point would be you acknowledge the request. If you acknowledge the request, that's professional. If you ignore the request, that's unprofessional. It's as simple as that. But please, you know, SBL is an applied exam. I'm hoping that you're not spending time at home learning the format of report, learning the format of press release, learning. I mean, you know, these are normal styles of communication used in the business world in general, and that's why they're asked in the exam. So let's not get obsessed with it, but let's acknowledge them. And if we're not very clear about what they look like, by all means have a look. But the point of SBL is not to know the difference between a briefing note and a briefing paper. They are very similar, just got a different title, but the flow would be the same. But yeah, can we try to get away from the minutiae, because that's nothing to do with passing the exam. What is to do with passing the exam is the way I approached that and the way I broke it down. So, you know, what do you think? Any questions, any disagreements, any agreements with context? Difficult to get the script, I think. Let me see what we can do, because I just did it on the platform. I didn't do it as a script. I did it on the ACCA platform, just as a recording. I'm not quite sure. I mean, just Jazz said it was blurry. It wasn't blurry for me. And normally, when you are watching a video, it's normally because someone's watching Netflix. They're, you know, downloading something, and it impacts on your bandwidth. So if you are, you know, it's always good to try to, you know, especially if I'm presenting, I connect my cable directly into my modem. I discourage others in my house. I live in a house with 5 other people, and they're all, you know, watching movies or, you know, talking to their friends on FaceTime or, you know, Zoom or whatever. So I kind of say, look, I'm doing a call. It's important. Please get off. Exactly. Wei Kan says, good, clear format, easy to read. That's what you've been taught. Well, you've been taught well because you are practicing a project management exercise in mark acquisition. If you follow the requirements, you focus on the marks, and you lay it out in a way that makes the marker find it easy to mark, you're in a good place. Nurul Husna, I learned something new, the bold and the underline. You don't have to do that, but you can just see how it enhances the communication between you and the marker. So there's no extra marks for it, but it just psychologically makes it much clearer. So again, that comes from practice. If you were doing a mock, you would get feedback on that, hopefully, to say this is better practice to do it this way. Nora thinks my technique is good. Well, hopefully it's good, Nora. I've been doing it for 25 years, so if mine's not good, you know, God help the rest of people. Debbie, when the exam is over, how do we submit our answers? No, well, again, that is all explained. You have to press end exam and it gets submitted. But again, Debbie, I would make sure that you are fully conversant with the CBE instructions that we referred to earlier. And I think maybe at the end of this session, Joanne might pop those into maybe some of the information. And just on, I can't remember who won. It's interesting. Could I have the copy of the answer? Yeah, I mean, I'll see, but I don't, because I just did it to save time. So that rather than me spend an hour doing it live, I thought let me spend about 20 minutes doing it recorded, because then I can speed it up for you. The point is not the answer, okay? So give you if I can find an answer and I give it to you, I'm going to learn the answer. The point is not learning the answer. The point is understanding the technique and the approach I took, regardless of the question. If you're looking at the marks like I did, breaking your points down into relevant bits like I did, that's the message I want to get across. Not that the part 2 of part 3 was this. That's irrelevant. All of that is available on the examiner's report. There's a full examiner's report you can look at. It tells you what the answer is. The answer is not the point. It's the way you deliver the answer which is crucial to you doing well in the exam. So please, that's the point I'm trying to get across. Not what's the answer to part 2, part 3. That's irrelevant. It's in the examiner report. It's in the official answers. It's how you do it. Okay. Nurul tends to overrun time during practice. Fantastic. When I was learning to drive a car, I would stall. What would I do? I would reflect. Why did I stall? What did I do? I pulled my clutch up too quickly. Next time I'm going to do it better. That's the whole point of practicing, to get better. We are not the finished article unless we practice. We only need to get 50 on the day of the exam. Terry says the answer to first part question 1A is technical definition, principal and agent. I wasn't just defining it, I was setting the scene, I was contextualizing the fact that it's talking about corporate governance relationships in the context of what is effectively a charity. So that's different to your traditional shareholder and board of directors. So I was just contextualizing it. So I think it was appropriate to give context, yes. Wei Can, yeah, I also learned time management start and end. Yeah, but as well as doing it, you got to actually action it, and you've got to feel I've got to leave. Yep, not oh well, let's stay, because you're dead if you stay. You've got to go. All right, you've got to leave. It feels like I can say more. Of course you can say more. You only need over 50. You do not need 100. You need 50 or more. Okay? And the easiest way to pass is to get 50% of the whole exam. If you are limiting your ability to answer the whole exam, you're limiting your ability to pass. Key point. JY, do we need to write the definition before we answer the question? You don't always need to do it, but as I explained, I just thought the context here was slightly different to usual, so I was just stating that I understand what's going on here, and this is the situation. Nadia, I feel anxious thinking about clicking sounds and keyboard and mouse of others during the CB exam. Well, that's a shame, Nadia. Maybe if you're that worried about keyboard sounds, maybe you can't do the exam, or maybe you just get over that and get on and pass the exam. Your choice. You can not do your exam because you're a little bit worried about keyboard sounds. That's up to you. But I would get over it and get on with my life, earn some money as a qualified accountant, and forget about keyboard sounds. Okay? What about people with a cough or a cold? Or what about air conditioning noise? You've got to zone out of that because you are going to pass this exam. You are focused to pass this exam. Yeah, I'm not bothered about other things. I'm on a mission to pass my exam. Okay? So get rid of those distractions, please. Dewey, copying the requirements, allocating number of points and time. Is it to be done? Not necessarily, but if you can, great. Wei Can, learning the approach and exam technique is really important. Of course it is. This is SBL, how to demonstrate the 5 skills. It's really through practicing. I still haven't finished those past year to grab the technique. Okay, but you're on the journey there. You're on the journey, Wei Kang, and that's fantastic. Fantastic. AS, would you mind addressing your question to panelists and attendees, AS? So we have asked this a couple of times, and I'm not going to answer questions that are just to panelists because others can't see. So if you could address it to panelists and all attendees, I will answer those questions, just because we've asked twice now. And it's useful. There's a lot of people on board, and if they can't see it, it's not great for them. Shima, have you raised your hand again, or is it just permanently raised? I'm imagining Shima at home looking like this. It doesn't matter if you haven't. Okay, Yees has asked, sir, short forms like BOD for Board of Directors can be used directly. They can, but I think I would initially say Board of Directors, BOD. Sometimes some of the names of the questions in cases are quite long, and it's a bit of a pain to type them all out. So maybe we start with the name of the company, abbreviation, and that would be fine that we use that from then on. That's what I would say. Okay. Happy? Any other questions? Hopefully you can pick up how passionate I am about you passing. Yeah, and I am not, as a student, if I was you, going to let typing, air conditioning, a fly, whatever, get in the way. So I'm Usain Bolt. I'm about to do the 100 meters. Oh, someone's slurping on a straw in the stand. That's going to put me off my race. Do you think Usain Bolt's bothered about that? Someone does a camera. Everyone stop taking photographs. I can't concentrate on the 100 meters. Of course, you've got to be zoom. You've got to be there. This is my exam. Yeah. So please, can you get focused, some of you? It's really important. Tim, in the examiner report, the report was saying that when it comes to presentation slides, candidates' answers were not persuasive. Well, I think the key point I would make to you on slides is virtually all of the marks for a slide are given for the notes to a slide. And yet I see a lot of answers which have all of the answer in the slide. The slide is a bullet point. You need to make a clear reference between the bullet point in the slide and the notes you make below. So I would literally do my slide, copy what's on the slide down, and then have that as a heading, and then explain, a heading, explain, a heading, explain. That's really important. If it's 5 marks, I want 5 explained points if you want to get close. And they're often easy to get those things, but people just, there was one where it was 8 marks and they did 2 points. Well, you're going to get 2 out of 8. You've got to give notes, please. So thank you, Tim. Good question. The persuasiveness, yeah, it depends on what the context of the question was. That probably came through in the professional skills marks saying, they're for evaluation and your ability to persuade, so that often is in the small print of the professional skills marks. So very good. Okay. Anything else there? Okay. All right. That's great. So let me just. So what we just talked about was a question. We didn't talk about that. 1 second. We just talked about how to break a question down. And the next thing I'd like just to draw your attention to is how do you do a question involving numbers? Okay, someone's asked this already, and I said I'd bring something in, so I brought something in about numbers. And the reason for this is the way we deal with numbers at SBL is different to the way you deal with numbers on previous papers. On previous papers, it's Well, it's often 1 and 1 equals 2. It's adding things up. It's doing some complex calculation. Big deal that you can do that, if I'm really honest. A computer can do it far better. A spreadsheet can do it far better. A spreadsheet can use an IRR calculation in about 10 seconds. It would take you a lot longer to do an IRR calculation. But the spreadsheet functionality to do that, and if you're doing AFM, you definitely need to know that when you're doing it in a CBE. So the marks that are going to be awarded on the SBL question involving numbers involve you to interpret those numbers, and I've got an answer to 1 part B from December 20 to show you that. So we're going to load a video in a moment, video 3, and video 3 is going to talk about how we deal with questions involving numbers. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and hopefully I don't have to sing, but if I do, well, no problem. So, oh, no, don't have to. So on this, just before we start this video, can I just ask you to check that you haven't got Netflix in the bedroom and your housemates or your children are, you know, on Zoom calls to their friends? Because if that is the case, that is definitely going to reduce your bandwidth, and when playing a video could potentially make it not so clear. So let's give you just a couple of seconds to make sure that's not happening, because from where I'm sitting, I'm seeing the video fine, and I think it's probably something to do with bandwidths at your end. Okay, so just make sure that you're giving yourself the opportunity of maximum bandwidth in your home, and there shouldn't be a problem viewing the video. So this video is talking about how we deal with numbers. It's looking at part B, and I'm going to keep quiet now, put myself on mute, and we're going to watch it.
Let's now have a look at task 1B. So to remind you, we are asked here to analyse the financial and non-financial performance of BCO in the latest financial year 20X1. So very clear there, providing reasons for and implications of the results. That's a really important thing for you to acknowledge on an SBL paper, because many examiner reports talk about how students simply just give the calculations and don't really show any reason for or implications of them. And unfortunately, if you read the examiner report, this was the same in this exam. Yep, and it basically said that many candidates presented a wide range of correct percentage change calculations for a lot of the information, but in many cases it went little further than this. Yep, and you know, the examiner report says quite clearly the question requirement clearly asked for analysis plus reasons for and implications of results. And if you just stated the numbers, you would not get any marks, because the examiner describes answers which just do a few percentages to be observational rather than analytical, and you will not gain any credit. So really, really important that when you're doing questions of this nature in your exam, you must not only present a correct calculation, but you also must evaluate whether this is a positive, a negative, it's significant, it's concerning, and so on. Have you considered why it might have happened? Have you linked it to something else? And also, have you called out the potential consequence of the rise or the fall? So let's have a look then. What I would do, as I did with 1A, I would copy and paste the requirements into the word processing area. And I'm also aware that we're going to get professional skills marks for analysis skills in considering the relevant information and evidence relating to BCO's financial and non-financial performance. So essentially, are we trying to explain with the evidence we're given why some of the figures may show the results that they do? So in the word processing area, to save time, I've copied this in. I've copied in a plan for 1B, and I've thought about it, 13 marks. I would then have thought, well, 13 marks, if I'm using 40 minutes for reading and planning, obviously, if you're taking a little longer, you need to adjust your per minute mark. But if we assume 40 minutes, so we've got 13 marks. If we look at 2.5 times 13, it comes out at about 32.5 minutes. So when I would be answering in the exam, again, just to stress, I'm going to do start and I'm going to do finish. Looking at the questions, it talks about financial and non-financial. Well, the information that we're going to use for this is going to be in Exhibit 4, and this is all given in Exhibit 4. And I can see from Exhibit 4 that really I probably have quite a lot more information regarding financial information as opposed to non-financial. So I'm not thinking that this question is 50% financial and 50% non-financial, but I definitely need to acknowledge the non-financial aspects. When dealing with a question of this nature, where you are given all that activity information that you are given in the Exhibit 4, is you simply copy and paste and do some calculations. So again, I prepared this earlier, but it took me literally a couple of minutes. I copy and pasted the information which went into column B, C and D, and then I literally worked out the percentage change between what happened in 20x1 over what happened in 20x0, and you can see my sum there, and I literally copied all that down and made it a percentage, and I got this information in literally less than a minute. So use the spreadsheet functionality. But the other thing important, I titled it up here, if you see Appendix 1, question 1b. So you do your calculations in the spreadsheet area, but you do your mark acquiring answer in the word processing area. So if I just look at what I said, start and finish, financial performance evaluation, I said the calculations to which these comments refer to can be sourced in the spreadsheet section, Appendix 1. So just in case I maybe got a calculation wrong and we can apply the own figure rule, that would be how you do it. But the point I would suggest is you make your answer where you want to show to the marker your understanding in the word processing area. So what do I have here? I've broken down financial performance evaluation, and I've used subheadings and white space. And don't forget, what I'm trying to do with my answer is on each separate answer I give, I'm trying to, consider why it's happened, evaluate whether it's a positive, it's negative, it's significant, it's concerning. And I was thinking, so the so what on each bit. So the first thing I make a subheading for is income from wildlife park admissions. And if we look at our spreadsheet area, we can see that this income went up by 3.3%. Now, if you just said income went up 3.3%, that wouldn't be enough. Yeah, you wouldn't get any marks for that at all. But if we investigated a little bit further, income went up, but if you look further down, visitor numbers actually went down. So how come income went up and visitor numbers went down? Did they put the prices up? Did they have a different ticketing pricing structure? I'm not sure, but I'm going to make some comment on that. The income rose to 3,103 from 3,005k in 20XO, which represents an increase of 3%. I get it. However, this increase was despite visitor numbers dropping by nearly 2%, and the income increase is a reflection of the fact that admission prices in the year increased. So I have drawn some conclusions, and I'm going to get at least a mark for that, maybe even 2. But I haven't just said income went up or income went down. I've given some reason. I've also then followed through for definitely another mark, is that it's concerning that visitor numbers have fallen, as visitor income is a major contribution to, again, spelling mistakes don't get penalized, overall income representing approximately 15% of total income, and the fall in numbers could have a knock-on effect to other income sources such as income generated from the shop and the cafe. So again, I think that's worth at least a mark, that I've really drawn some conclusion that if visitor numbers go down, that's less people in the park, less people spending money either in the gift shop or in the cafe. Hopefully you're picking up how I have not just given the result, I've I've tried to visualize as well. I'm thinking, this is a safari park. I've been to one as a kid. What do? I maybe buy a toy lion or something, or I get a burger in the shop. Yep, that kind of thing. I get a key ring. I get some stickers. So then we look at income from wildlife park, shop and cafe. And if we were to look at that in the spreadsheet, we can see that this income wasn't split, but it went up 15%, which is great despite numbers going down. And we want to draw some conclusions from that. So we say, that's a good result. So we've actually decided that 15% increase is a good result, and demonstrated that in the year, the shop and cafe were able to offer customer services that were either more attractive and profitable than the year before. Maybe there's a better product mix, better promotions, and maybe more efficient operations as well that was enabling people to spend more money. Yeah, maybe they opened longer or opened earlier, I don't know. But there's definitely a big increase in income, and that's something to comment on. I then talked about membership fees, and they said, well, individual membership fees went up slightly, although if you think about it, less people visited the park, so there were less people to convert into individual members. So actually that wasn't bad. Numbers down, membership conversion up. So yeah, again, I made some good connectivity and conclusion there, but there was a huge rise in corporate membership income of 133%. But I also state, it's gone up a lot, but this income source is still quite low. And if you think about, things like, national museums and things, they often attract a lot of corporate sponsorship to sponsor an event or an exhibit. So why doesn't BCO encourage people to sponsorship an animal, sponsor a panda or an elephant, or other similar marketing initiatives in which corporations will be able to improve their corporate brand awareness by association with BCO. So again, I think that second point on its own is definitely worth 2 marks, because I've really given some insights to how things can improve. And I think this one's probably worth a couple of marks as well, because yes, it was encouraging, but it was even more encouraging because the numbers went down. So you can see I'm scoring quite well just on membership fees, because I'm following through with my points. If we talk about education program income, I showed that from the spreadsheet that this actually fell 6.1%. So we carry that through and we say, yes, it fell 6.6%. This could be explained by the number of training courses falling by 4%. So again, evaluation and professional skills marks are being earned there by making that connectivity. And it's concerning, as we actually do have a corporate objective, a strategic objective of increasing education. Again, no mark deducted for spelling mistakes. I'm making a few, but you're likely to, as long as it's, but when we check, we pick them up. Again, I've misspelled objective here, but doesn't matter. So yeah, further investigation into this fall should be made, because it is part of our strategic objectives. Again, I then made a comment on donation, grant and legacy income, which was a 16% down on the year. And I then followed on saying this is particularly concerning because it represents a third of our total income. Yep, and we need to investigate the reasons and maybe step up marketing activity there. So that was a bit of a worry. What else do we have? Overall, though, income has gone up despite our major contributor of income falling significantly in donations, grants and legacy. So we actually haven't done too badly, and that's something we should congratulate ourselves for. Obviously, the flip side of income is how much we spend. So then I went to talk about where expenditure was done, and if you look at the figures. We are given figures for the wildlife park, and we're given figures for in the field. So to maximize my mark earning potential, I didn't combine these things as just charitable activities. I actually broke them into separate little pieces and tried to draw some conclusions for each piece so I could maximize my mark. So let's have a look what I said about the wildlife park. On the wildlife park, we talked about how this expenditure went up 9%. We need to investigate why it went up so much. And I'm then trying to hypothesize or speculate why it went up. We need to investigate were there any particular issues that had to be dealt with that year. For example, was there a disease broke out that cost a lot in vet fees? Was there high inflation? Were we less efficient? I don't know, but let the marker know that this is how your brain's working, and then the marker can give you credit for your suggestions. In the same way, animal support in the field, well, you might recall from reading the case that the activity was taking place, I think, in 100 countries. So has this figure rose 6.6% for a reason, or because there is a lot of overseas exposure? Has this increase taken place because exchange rate fluctuations? I don't know. Or maybe inflation in some countries. I don't know. But it's good to demonstrate your alert to such things. And then looking at costs of commercial operations, these have actually gone down. So this particularly was the shop and the cafe. And it would seem that the shop and the cafe seem to be better managed. And, I've used there a little example at the end. It's not clear that there's anything to do with the sale of an inefficient property in the year. So again, good professional skills marks. You have clocked. If you just have a look at this, there was in the accounts a sale of a property. Was this an inefficient property that incurred a lot of commercial cost? I don't know, but I'm trying to draw a reason maybe for a reduction in costs, so there's a good point, a good recognition. But is it also maybe the result of the fact that we changed our pricing approach to maximize margin, and maybe we offered something, customers didn't think it was more expensive, but we're clever in our pricing, e.g. a meal deal in the cafe. Just show the marker that you're thinking a certain way. So that's an excellent way. Follow through with an example of how to get the extra +1 mark. We then look at non-financial performance, and the first thing we look at is staff mix, and we can show that, or we can see from our calculations that the number of paid staff did reduce by 2%, but volunteer staff went up by nearly 17%. Now, this might be good, but it depends where these staff are being applied. If they're non-skilled areas, that's great. We can get people to do it for free, but we just need to be cautious that this isn't part of a trend of cutting full-time, replacing with volunteers, because some of those full-time staff will be expert vets and expert animal carers, and we need them to make the park efficient. Volunteers wouldn't have that level of expertise. Visitor numbers fell by 2%. This is disappointing. Why did they fall? Was it the result of less effective marketing? Let's investigate the effectiveness of current marketing. And is there any particular group that dropped? Well, I just thought when I was a kid at school, I used to go on a school trip to the local wildlife park. So I just threw that in. Which particular customer groups have dropped and why have they dropped? And I didn't clump together visitor numbers and visitor contribution because I wanted to maximize my potential scoring, and therefore I did a separate heading for visitor contribution, and I stated that despite customer numbers falling, the people who actually visit the park spend much more per customer than in previous years, and we need to investigate where the income increased to try and replicate that behavior in other areas. So another great thing that we identified. It mentioned training days. Can I say anything about training days? Well, I can, because I can connect them to the corporate objectives. And the number of training days fell by nearly 6%, which is concerning. Let me spell concerning right. Because our corporate objectives state a commitment. God, my spelling really was going bad here. A commitment to increase education and training. This is something we need to investigate. That's one word, isn't it? Something we need to investigate so as to ensure we achieve our corporate objectives. So obviously, you know, we've stated in our corporate objectives we're going to increase training days, and yet they're falling. It's a KPI of the business that needs to be looked at. In the same way, the number of animals being reintroduced into their habitat back to the wild, that fell by 5%, which again is really concerning, as a key strategic objective of the business was to do this. And you could argue that that's the very reason for the existence of the charity, yet this particular aspect is falling, so it needs to be investigated. So again, what did I do, and what would I encourage you to do? I thought about what I was going to say. I could have said more, but I didn't really have time. You know, I didn't talk about total expenditure because I had other more pertinent points to make. I left white space. I used a bold heading for each separate point where I wanted to encourage the marker to see separate points. Again, under income from wildlife park, I split it with white space to kind of say to the marker, here you go, give me a mark, and give me a mark for this, you know, the significance of the point, and here's a space, and I'm going to give you another point with another so what at the end for another 2 marks potentially. So just take notice of what I've done there, because this, as the examiner report says very clearly, there's lots of students who calculate all the numbers, and I actually calculated all those numbers using the spreadsheet functionality in literally a minute, but we showed that to do a question which in this case had 13 marks, and that equated to 33 minutes, obviously 1 mark, 1 minute, or 1 minute's worth of calculations is not going to get you any marks. But it's the conclusions that you draw, the consequence of what's said. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it concerning? And that is the main message that was really brought home from the examiner report if you have a look at it on 1B. And, you know, please remember that if you're just stating a number's increased or decreased without any further discussion, you're not going to get any marks. Yep, you must interpret the calculations. Okay. And also, you know, think about the context of things. I did question the fact, you know, if you thought it was great that we're getting lots of volunteers, well, it is, but it's not great if we're getting volunteer vets or volunteer, you know, animal behaviorists. That's not something we're likely to find amongst a volunteering population, and we would need to employ specifically trained experts in those fields. So we just have to work that. But to score the higher end of professional skills marks, you would have been bringing in some reference to what's been going on, for example, such as the sale of that building, such as you know, better contribution per visitor. So well done. Hopefully that is helpful.
Hey gang, I hope that was helpful. Let me just have a look at a few chats that have come through. AS is again sending things to panelists. Would you mind sending it to panelists and attendees, please? Norwinder, panelists are happy, okay. Nadia, can you please send it to attendees and panelists? Tim, thank you. Fu says to panelists and attendees, for the professional skills marks, does it matter if we write in first person or third person? I think you have to just be professional, Fu, and do it in the context in which the question's asked. What else do we have here? I've tried out the platform, but when I select the contents, click and copy. Janice, I think someone answered this question, didn't they? You can copy, Control C, Control V, or just go edit, copy, edit, paste. Both of them work. again, please be familiar with all of the great information that the ACCA has produced and is there for you to look at to help you on CBE exam experience. It's there. You've got to look at it. Would you please share any more comments highlighted by most of the examiner reports aside from those common ones like students are not linking to the exhibits? Oh my goodness. So Vincent, you want me to look at all the examiner reports because it's only me that's got access to the examiner reports. No one else can see them. Or maybe you might want to go and look at the examiner reports yourself, digest the salient points, learn from them. I mean, there's been exams every 3 months since 18. So Vincent, unfortunately, if you want to pass this exam, you're going to have to digest those yourself. I've tried to I've picked up, but you have a look as well. That's what they're there for. They're there for students and for nobody else. Yeah, it's copy and paste, much easier. Is it okay to assume the reasons? Yes, because that's the whole point. We don't know. So some of those changes, did the price go up, didn't it? I don't know, but it could be a reason. And by giving those reasons, you are demonstrating to the marker that, yeah, you know what's going on. So you need to explain your assumptions. You don't keep them in your own head because obviously no marks would be awarded for that. The case is never a complete set of information, so we have to sometimes assume things. Okay, does that make sense? Any more queries, questions that I can help you with? Okay. All right, well, what I want to spend the rest of our session doing is just summarizing about the need to really engage with full-scale exam practice and then talk about what you need to do in the next few weeks. So we're getting closer to the exam. If we haven't built our exam behavior up to full exam practice, we need to do so. Yep, so we need to get hold of an official published exam kit or look at the past exams on the ACCA website and get stuck into them and try and practice them on the ACCA exam platform. Better still, if you can get someone to run a mock for you and mark it and give you comprehensive feedback, that would be best. So we need to do a full exam to time, and for me, sitting a mock to time is the single most important element of preparing for your ACCA exam. To not do so is massively handicapping your chance. It's not about doing great in the mock, and a lot of people don't do the mock and they say to me, oh, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. Well, we're a few weeks, you're never going to be ready if you don't practice. Yep. It's about learning from your mistakes. It's about getting feedback. It's about reflecting on your experience. It's really valuable. Try and do it to exam conditions, please. Please, please, please. It is the best thing, rather than some people say, oh, I failed for the 3rd time and I've learned all the chapters. Well, that's why you failed. Have you done any mocks to time? No. Okay. So you failed your driving test for the 4th time. Have you been in a car other than on the days of your driving test? No. Well, you can work it out. So I'm not going to say any more about it. I've gone on and on about it. Get onto the ACCA platform, become familiar with CBE exams, because that's what all ACCA exams are going to become like. You might be unlucky because of COVID and you might have to do your exam remotely. So, might not be in an exam center. Who knows? So let me talk briefly about how SBL is marked. If you are self-marking, how is it marked? Well, let me give you an overview of how the exam team works. You've got a marking session lead or the examiner. Obviously, there's a few members of the team. The qualifications technical advisor is an employee of the ACCA who holds the examiner to account, and then helping the marking session lead or examiner of that particular exam are some team leaders and markers below them. Yep, so that's how it works. There's quite a few markers. All the markers are expert, as I will show. And what tends to happen is the examining team lead will select a sample of maybe 6 to 8 scripts, and they will mark them independent of each other, and then they will look at those scripts and decide what's a good, what's an average, what's a poor script, and then they will get together and discuss a definitive marking scheme. Yep. From that definitive marking scheme, they'll develop some practice scripts, and these practice scripts would then be sent to the markers, and they would be given a marking guide, and they would be asked to mark these scripts, and their marks would then be compared with the marking team scripts, and if their marks deviate by even a small amount, the leaders of each marker, the team leaders, will require the marker to reflect and learn and submit more scripts until they get to the standard. And then once they get to the standard, they're allowed to start marking. Yep. However, whilst they are marking, amongst student scripts, there will be what are known as seeding scripts, which are scripts set by the examiner, who knows what mark should be awarded for the script, and they're put in to check that the marker is maintaining the standard they prove they can be. So my point is, it's really, really thoroughly marked. And those people that get their scripts remarked, I don't think, the ACCA has to provide that service, but it's not going to change. Yeah, their marks are added electronically. The computer doesn't get sums wrong. Yeah, you cannot, as a marker, submit a script unless all pages have been annotated. So it's impossible for markers to mark scripts, to miss out pages, because you won't be allowed as a marker to submit them. So don't pay for a remark. You've just got to do the exam again. Okay, I'll just go back to some questions. Sir, are we need to elaborate paragraphs of financial analysis, or do you just need to elaborate? Depends on the marks given. Well, as I said, Ada, you will get no marks for just doing the sum. You need, because that is just kind of, it's not interpretive. It's just kind of giving the sum answer. Ting Yi says, does it need to be under? It can be under the same briefing paper. It doesn't need to be separate. Ada says 8 marks is 4 points with analysis. Yes, but if say you only get 1 mark for each of those points because they're not developed enough, that's 4 out of 8. That's risky. I would try to do 6 points and hopefully getting 2 for each. But so be careful. You're cutting it fine there, Ada. Yik Heng, sir, if the case is similar to some real life companies, will it be all right if we mention those companies as examples? Yes, but explain what you mean. To be honest, all cases are similar to real life companies. The examiner isn't someone that has amazing imagination. They just copy a real life company always. Tim says the standards depend on those first few scripts. Not really, because they all mark them independently of each other, and they're experienced markers. You don't just become a marker. You are chosen to become a marker because you have some knowledge. So it's very thorough marking. How many hours do I recommend studying per day? Well, I don't know. How many calories do I expect you should eat? Nurul, you've got to find your own way on that one. Does it mean no? Because the marking team is the same and standards are maintained and strictly maintained, Tim. SY, sir, what if question did mention the reason for increase, but we still assume the reason ourselves? Well, are you saying if you just repeat what's said in the exhibit, will you get a mark? You won't. It will not normally give you a complete set of information. Can I give you some more tips on how to explain points? Well, you have a figure. The revenue has gone up. The numbers have gone down. What is the reason for that? Profit's gone up. What's the reason for that? Okay, we can calculate it. No marks for that. But why might profit go up? Margins better? Are you more efficient? You have to think like a business person, not just regurgitate the answer to the sum. A spreadsheet does that, you get no marks for it. So you need to learn to have some commercial evaluation, and by looking at past exam answers will help. Nurul, I am being sarcastic. Sorry, it's an English trait, and I apologize. I don't mean to be offensive, but I think you're asking how many hours. Ooh, I don't know I'll talk about studying in a moment to help you. Okay. So I was being sarcastic, apologies. Okay, lovely. Thank you for all your questions. And you keep asking them, despite my sometimes sarcasm, so apologies for that, but it's all in good fun. Right. So on the answers you will see of real questions, the suggested answers are not an expectation of what you're supposed to do, and they are there to have a tutorial purpose and not actually what the student should do. Yep, credit can be given for any relevant answer. Yep, so markers are experts and there is broad scope for what you can say. There is no negative marking. There's no marking for poor grammar, poor spelling. It's an international exam. A lot of people are taking this where English is not their first language. That is all acknowledged by the marking team. And yeah, so appreciate that. Basic principles of marking would also be one mark for the point, 2 mark for the development of that point. Most recent SBL have explained a bit more marking schemes. The marking is going to reflect the intellectual level across the strategic professional stage, and that intellectual level is all to do with something called Bloom's taxonomy. So if you're at the applied skills or the kind of lower levels, it will be comprehending and remembering. You might have to do a bit of analysis and applying. Most of the skills at strategic professional or evaluation and synthesizing the information. Okay, so the examiner's exam has to be able to tick those boxes of evaluation and synthesis. Yep. So if we look at what there would be an expectation of, you need to create new ideas from or insights into the existing knowledge. Yep. You need to bring together and conclude on stuff. Yeah, not just regurgitate stuff. Yeah, you need to use reasoned argument to infer or make judgment, because as I say, it won't give you all the information. So you need to kind of infer what might be the reason for that rise or fall. What is the potential consequence of that rise or fall? And you need to justify why you say what you say. So yeah, that's an intellectual level 3. So I want to just sort of the final part of this session is to talk about what we began with just at the beginning. And I said, really, regardless of whether you know the difference between a briefing paper and a briefing notes, which is irrelevant, your key thing is your heart, your motivation needs to be very clear here, really clear. And I want to talk about a bit of personal motivation, personal organization, and I want to talk about what you need to do in the next few weeks. Yep. First thing I would suggest that you do in the next few weeks is have a look at some of my articles on exam preparation in Student Accountant. Just put my name into Student Accountant. If you can't find them, email me and I'll send you links to them. I'll give you my email at the end, but have a look at those. You might have seen something about get some visual. What is this exam going to bring to you? What is the outcome of you succeeding in this exam? Have a read of it. Yeah, talking about how you plan your journey to that destination. Yep, have a look at that. Have a look at getting yourself brain fit. Yeah, when I talk about being brain fit, just like, the exam requires you to develop concentration levels, focus levels. You were asking me how, it's not about how many hours or how many chapters. You have to reflect when you are effective. Do you work best with no food? Do you work best after food? Different people, different things. Are you a morning person? Are you an evening person? Personally, I'd like to exercise. If I try and exercise in the evening, I find it impossible. So I actually get up early and I do my exercise, I don't know, between about 5:45 and 7 o'clock every day. And then I do it. Otherwise, I think, I've got some work, I'll do it later. I never do it. And I know that. So if I want to exercise, I've got to do it early in the morning. And you've got to find out when your sweet spot is. So yeah, that's what I'd say there. So you need to think about when you work, when you study, when you exercise, and when you relax. Yeah, that's what you need to think about. And it's really important that you do that. When do you work? When do you study? When do you exercise? When you relax? Because all of those are key to you doing well in the exam. So you need to have a plan. You need to, obviously got other things going on in your life, and you need to prioritize your life over the next few weeks. What is the most important? Do you really want to pass this exam, or are you worried about the air conditioning noise? So I'm going to worry about that, or I'm going to worry about, you know, the birds singing in the garden. Joanna has lovely birds singing in her, I think it's in her parents' garden. It sounds lovely when I speak to her. So prioritize and learn, you know, some study tasks, which hopefully you've come this far. You must be pretty good at doing exams. Just SBL is so different. Yep. When are you most productive? Well, you need to find that out. Yep. When you're most productive, either with food or no food, you're least likely to procrastinate and put things off. So if I get up, I do my exercise. If I try and do exercise in the evening, I just keep putting it off. Yeah. Get yourself into a routine. As I say, when you've got a routine establishes a habit. When you have a habit, you need no willpower to do anything. I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. So if you have, Wee Kang says, I think the slide is not showing. I apologize if the slide is not showing. Can you just let me know? Other people, can you see the slide? Okay, my fault. Let me check. Let me check. Can you see it now? Okay, I'm going to go back very quickly and just talk about what I've just said. I've just talked about articles. Read my articles. Yep, there's an article on the power of motivation. Read it, please. We can email me. I'll send you the link. Planning a route to success. Yep. Get yourself study fit. Yep. And, you know, think about when you're going to do your study. Think about when you were morning or evening, when you study. I mean, some of us have jobs. So when do we do our jobs? When do we study? When do we exercise? And when do you relax? All of those have to happen if you're going to be effective. To enable them to happen, what you need to have is you need to have a plan. So in your plan, you need to be prioritizing your tasks. Okay, so really think about where you are. If I'm in the Olympic final in July, I will know every minute of the next 10 weeks till the Olympics. You're doing your exam in early June. You should know what you're doing every minute of the day between now and the exam. If you don't, you're not organized. Work out when you're most productive. So as I say, how I exercise, I do it in the morning. I can't do it in the evening. Get yourself a routine. And this is where I think you told me the slides weren't happening. So if you get yourself a routine, that takes away the need of motivation to do anything. If you have a routine, you just do it. You don't need to say, oh, should I brush my teeth? Shouldn't I brush my teeth? You just get out of bed and you brush your teeth. No willpower required. And once you've established a habit, which you can establish in less than 2 weeks, you just do things. It's a really effective way to make sure you get things done. You also need to be thinking about turning this off and putting this away, and you know, it's really distracting and really draining on your brain, social media messaging. So just put that away and just look at your phone for maybe an hour a day. That's it. And let people know that. You know, or you know, look at WhatsApp all day or WeChat, but fail your exam. Up to you. If WeChat's more important about someone's got, you know, a new puppy, big deal. You're going to pass your exam if you want to pass your exam. If you don't, look at WeChat videos on puppies. Yep. So I also think to help your brain deal with all of this, you know, you need, first of all, to have structure with waking and sleeping. So make sure you go to bed at the same time and get up at the same time. Find out when you're in a state of flow, because when you are in a state of flow, absolutely, that's when the best work gets done. Set yourself deadlines. If you set yourself deadlines, I think Elon Musk divides his day up into 5-minute blocks, 5-minute blocks, but he runs $3 billion companies, surprise, surprise. So I'm not asking you to be Elon Musk, but if you just say, oh, I'm going to look at corporate governance today, or are you for the next 30 minutes going to look at agency theory, and then you're going to look at COSO control aspects for the next 30 minutes, and then for 15 minutes you're going to have a coffee, and then you're going to spend 20 minutes walking the dog, and then you're going to spend 30 minutes doing something on blockchain. Yeah, that's how, if you structure your life, you will get much more done. That will avoid procrastination, and having a deadline will definitely help. Yeah, otherwise you feel overwhelmed. All you can do is do what you can do. Okay. So set deadlines, time management. Yeah, as I've just said, there's something called the Pomodoro technique. You can get free apps for your phone on that. Although, to be honest, I would use an alarm clock. I don't want any notifications or apps on my phone. They're just distracting. But Pomodoro, I think it breaks things down into 20, 25 minutes. It's based on your cycles in your brain. And we can't really focus more than about 20, 25 minutes. And those short bursts prevent procrastination, which is very important. Also, there is a reward. There is a reward for you behaving this way. Yep, there is a reward. So you're able to go out and actually, if if I'm messing around and I'm surfing the internet, I still go out. You've been surfing the internet, it's tough, you've missed your study, because next time, zoom, you'll be more focused. So think about the prize. What is this exam going to bring to you? What are you going to get? Have you thought about it? Yeah. What's it going to help you do? It's going to get you more money. What are you going to do with the money? Yep. Or it's going to stop you studying. But please stop studying as soon as you can and get on with your life. So do everything you can to make sure you can pass this exam as quickly as possible, because then you'll start earning money and you'll have more money and you'll have more time. Perfect combination. Yep. But get that clear. Don't just, it's not going to happen if you don't do that. Right. I've got we. Sir, would you recommend part-time student, full-time working candidates to do? What would you recommend part-time student, full-time working candidates to do for the forthcoming week to prepare for the exam? Well, the same. I mean, to be honest, it's the minority of people. I think in China you have a lot of full-time students, but most people who are doing strategic professional exam are all working quite hard. So if you feel work is quite demanding, maybe talk to your boss and say, look, I'm quite happy to work 9 till 5 or 9 to 6. But I've got my exams, and I'll catch up after the exam if you don't mind. So your time, my time, is your time between 9 and 5. But would you mind me studying outside those times? So I might get up. Well, I'll tell you a story. Student of mine couldn't do a mock exam to time for me once, and I said, "Oh, what's the problem?" He goes, "Oh, I was busy," and it's like, "Oh, busy, eh? Ooh." And I was being sarcastic, like I was to someone before. And then she told me a story that she was busy because her husband had died and she had 4 kids under 6, and her life was pretty packed. And the problem was she had a full-time job. She was obsessed with paying her kids in private schools, so she wanted to be a qualified accountant, very driven as a result. But she worked till about 7. Her parents fortunately could look after her kids for her. So she came home about 7:30 after a day at work, spoke to her older kids who were maybe 4 or 5, read them a story, and then made some food for herself, and she was shattered and went to bed. So I says, oh my goodness, so when do you get time to study? And she said, well, it's quite tough, but my kids wake up about 6. So, it's hard. So I see my kids and then I have to go to work. So what I tend to do, I get up about 3:15, 3:30 and try and work between about 3:15 and 3:30 and 6 a.m. And I find I can get some study done there because my kids are asleep. So my question to you, what were you doing at 3:30 this morning? Yeah, what were you doing? I know what the student who passed the exam was doing, My point is, if you want to achieve something, you will find a way. If you want to procrastinate, it's up to you. But you, and that's what I was saying, why it's so important, you need to get the mental connection. Do you want to pass this exam? That is the most important thing. Why are you working? Why do you want to pass? If you get that clear, you will be driven. If it's just like, because I want to be an accountant, that's not driving enough. So you need to sort that out. So that would be my main point, Ziwi. If I pronounced that wrong, I apologize. But that is a true story, Ada. It's not. I've not made that up. That is a true story. And it was me saying, busy are you? And she kind of cut me down, but gave me a great story to share. So important. Okay. I'm not familiar, Joanne, with my tips are the basic 4 principles in atomic habits. I mean, I'm fortunate. I do work with a lot of qualified teams and come across some clever people. One of them is a top neuroscientist I know very well. And she obviously tells me all the things that neuroscientists have found out, because you can wire up brains now to MRI scanners relatively inexpensively. An MRI scan used to be very expensive, but they're much more readily available. They're cheaper. So we're beginning to understand brains much, much more. And one of the things that is definitely beneficial is establishing habits. Once you develop a habit, you do it and it's easy. Yep. Yeah, I love psychology as well, Tim. I've really become, wow. I wish I'd studied more about it, because we can change things. But the architect of your future is you. You are the architect of your future. Okay, it's you, and it's only you. Okay, so you need to get that right. The other thing that helps me, put on some lively music, get yourself going. Yep. Bring your energy level up. Your brain is really less effective when it's only minutely dehydrated. So make sure you have got a bottle of water to keep yourself hydrated. I think most of your brain is water. So you've got to keep it hydrated so that it can, have all those neurons firing and creating memories. Yep. The other thing that's going to affect you is the food you eat. If you eat a lot of uncomplex carbohydrates, white flour, stuff like that, it just gets dumped as glycogen, makes you sleepy. All proven. So try to, if you are going to eat carbs, slow release carbs. Yep. Slow release carbs release sugar into our bloodstream more slowly, make us less sleepy. Yep. So I'm not sure nasi lemak, white rice, is the best breakfast, but maybe the chili will help. But the white rice, try to not have much, refined white rice and stuff like that. It makes you more lethargic, definitely. Yep. If you're stressed, do some exercise, gets rid of those. When you're stressed, we produce cortisol, and sweat is the only way we can get rid of it. Also, exercise produces endorphins, which raises our energy levels up. So think about that. Think about sending a signal as to where you work. Yep. Because again, when I sit down at this desk, boom, boom, it tells my brain, start working. When I go and sit on the sofa, dum, stop working. Yep. So really important, your working environment. Find a place. Find a place. What else? Think about exercise and diet. People who are tired are much more likely to procrastinate. So, it's really important about sleep. It's important about hydration. It's important having the right chemicals in our system. So chips, white rice, white bread, it's not great. It's not great. And that's why athletes who are, going to be gold medal winners really think about their diet, because it helps them have that burst of energy they need in Olympic finals. It's the same for studying. It really is. It really is. So think about that. There's lots about that. The next thing, though, I want to say to you, really final thing I want to say to you is all of what I've said to you here is only of any value, if you're going to embrace some of the things I've said. So yeah, I really liked it. It was good. But did you do anything? Because if you didn't do anything, it's a waste of time. Yeah, you should have been down, you know, watching a Netflix movie. Yeah. So I've been doing this for 25 years. Virtually all my students that study with me pass their exam. Okay, and you know that's because it works, not because I'm great, but the techniques I've learned, because I've done it for so long, it works. So if you take on board my advice, you're pretty likely to pass your exam. But the whole point of you listening to me for the last few hours is to make some changes. Yep. So what do you need to do? Well, you need to start today. Okay. Not next week. You need to start today. You need to break your study into manageable chunks. If you're stressed, think about mindfulness as well as exercising, bringing it down. Yep. I think there's an app with Spotify that's free called Headspace. Just gives you techniques to get you to zone out. In the same way we need to stretch after exercising, we sometimes need to bring our brains down. Yep. Exercise and diet should be part of your program. And most importantly is you have an eye on the prize. Okay, so that is the most important. What is this exam going to bring to you? How is your life going to change? What are you going to be able to do when you're a qualified accountant? Picture it, even get a picture on the wall of that. That's going to be you, but for you to get from here to there requires you to do some things. Okay, and the people that are successful and do earn lots of money and have a good lifestyle, they didn't get there by chance. They got there because they had a clear plan of moving from where they were to where they are now. So you need to make that change. Yeah, you need to think about that prize at the end of it all, and you will be successful. Okay, that is the key message I want to take away. You don't need it, but I want to wish you all the very best of luck. I'm sure you're going to do absolutely fine. If you believe you're going to do fine, it's very helpful in you doing fine. If you think, oh, I can't do it, that's not helpful at all. If you want to contact me in any way, they are my contact details, and I'll try and get back to you with information that you need. But please take on board. I'm not sure whether this is going to be a recording, but I think it's a good idea if you maybe reflect on what we've said. I'm sure it might be a recording, and you'll be able to watch the recording and go through the bits that you want to go through again. Yep, that's what I would like you to do. Yeah, so we can, very good analogy, like the model, unfreeze, change and refreeze. The hard part is usually to maintain the habit, refreeze it. Yeah, and it is difficult. You've got to work at that, making it a habit. But once it becomes a habit, you do things without even thinking about them. Yees, you made our day, and thanks for a great talk. Thank you very much, Yees. That's what I'm here to do. That's my job, to make sure people pass their SBL exam. Thanks for advice. That's fine. Please, though, take the advice. Okay, so I'm going to give you let's give you a 5-minute question time, and then we'll call it we'll call it a day, because you've been brilliant on asking questions. You've asked many questions. If you have any, I'm happy to stay on and answer some. But I think the way in which we've dealt with the questions has been quite useful, and you've asked me some great ones. Oh, so Tim's worried about the font size. I'm not. So draw your own conclusions. There is no font requirement. No. What's the font size? If I worked for Petronas, do I have to do things in a different font than if I work for Malaysian Airlines? Who cares, Tim? It doesn't matter. Focus on the main points. Thank you, Prerna. Thank you, Anis. Thank you, Farah. Thank you, Tim. This webinar session has been recorded. Stay tuned to your email box with the recording links. You're able to watch it. Yep, You might not want to watch all of it, but I think some of the points might be worth looking through. It's all about you getting your head in the right place and getting focused and prioritizing. Try to not do much of this. I know this is very addictive. It's terrible. I've just read a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and it talks about when we go and look at distracted, so it's talking about multitasking is dead, and when we look at a message on our phone, it's not looking at a message for 30 seconds. It actually takes us out of our deep work and distracts us for up to 10 minutes. So a 20-minute check of a message can actually be a 10-minute damage to our study flow. So please stay away from your phone. Thank you, Elin. Amar, lovely admin. Yes, lovely admin. Thank you for all your help, admin. Daniel, thank you. Iriani, Terry McCassie, yeah, Sama. So Terry McCassie to you all. Is it need to be, and don't use is it we can, right? That's street speak, it's not professional. I would keep long paragraphs to a minimum, articulated paragraphs. Thank you for sharing the recorded webinar. Thank you, Anis, Q, Tingyi, Asa, Chin, Nurul. Tim enjoyed my personality. Well, sorry if like people didn't understand sarcasm sometimes, but you've got some new exam methods. Brilliant, Tim. Think about doing an exam to time. Anmar, impeccable. Well, thank you, Anmar. Carissa, there's another session on the 20. I'm not sure there is. We've done a 4-hour. I'm not familiar with that. Maybe Joanne will come back to you on that. Thank you, Sarah. Jazz, thank you. Take care. Stay safe. Norwinder, thank you. Joanne, thank you. Vincent, thank you. Michelle, is there a likelihood? I think there is a likelihood of a COVID-related question somewhere, Michelle. Examiners like to think they're relevant and up to speed. So yes, COVID's been with us for over a year now, so I think there could be. But so what? You know, it's just it's an environmental risk, isn't it? How do we deal with it? We'll just copy how real companies are dealing with it at the moment. Yees, Dib, Tim, Charlena, Fu, Carissa, thank you. It's a pleasure. I've been delighted to have hopefully been a little bit of help. It's only useful though if you take on board what I've said. I wish you all the very best. I'm sure you're going to do brilliant. In the exam, don't let any marks go free. As I said, you know, some people say, look at a question, I can't do it. Please, what can I say? What can I say? I want to pass this exam. That's your attitude, fighting spirit. All the very best. Lots of luck. I hope you're qualified very soon. Thank you very much for listening.